All right. What's going on, good people? Hope everybody's well. Welcome back to the Onyx Report, where we as Black male justice advocates uplift Black men and boys using critical analysis. Hope everybody's well. Got a number of people in the house tonight. Good to see everybody. Shout out. Queen Kalila, how you doing? Busy Mike, what's up? Good brother Malika, what's going on, man? See if you're just popping through, glancing, ghetto user, what's up? AKs and curtains. I don't know the deal. What's up, brother Muada? Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel if you will, so we can continue to bring you this independent Black male thought. And just real quick, make sure that you support the channel. You can become a member. If you're on YouTube, you can go to Patreon and become a patron. You can support the Onyx Report show on YouTube. You can support the Institute for Black Male Studies online. You can go to institutefordblackmalestudies.com and check that out if you're interested. You can also support the Onyx Network, which you can download on Apple, Android, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and you can watch the channel 24/7. So there's a variety of ways to support, and I hope you will engage it. So please do so. And on the screen, you can see there's the Patreon function. There's the Cash App, the PayPal, and the Venmo. You support along those lines. Shout out to Christopher Williams for that support. And we can get it going. So we're not going to have a whole lot of rigmarole. We're going to jump in. But the thing about it, for tonight, I would very much like you guys to come up as early as possible, because the way this is going to go, and as you can see, spoilers, we're going to talk about the Best Man series, meaning we're going to talk about the two films that came out that started it all, and of course the latest addition to that canon, the Best Man chapters, that is premiering on Peacock. Right, so the whole series is up. I watched it in December and checked that out. It took me a while to do a show on it, but here's the thing. The reason we're talking about it is because I think in terms of programming, it speaks directly to how, media plays a significant role in conditioning us, especially in terms of relationships, in terms of ideas about gender, on how we're supposed to function, how we're supposed to get along, and what's being normalized. So I kind of want to talk about this, but I'm not sure how many of you may have seen it. So I'm just letting you know, if you stick around, there will be spoilers on all three projects, the first two movies, and of course this new series. So just letting you know, if that's not something you're interested in, feel free to check out. I want to give everybody an opportunity to do that. Shout out to Ghetto User. I appreciate that. So support the scholar. Thank you very much. Chef Mike, what's up? Good to see you in here. Gotta holler at you about some of the new recipes I've been jumping into and get a professional view on what I'm doing. I'm trying to take up some habits and some hobbies as my son is getting ready to transition into college. So about to get that in. But so the link is in the chat. You're welcome to come up. And let me just kind of get it started. Now, what I'll start with, a little bit of an intro for those who may not be familiar, right? The Best Man chapters is what has been added as of late to the whole series, the whole ongoing drama of a series of 8 friends from college, who are now gotta be in their 50s at this point. They gotta be, because they're older than me. So, we're looking at the lives and this is in one vein, one of the things I do like about it is you rarely get to see a list of Black characters that you get to follow this long. I mean, between the first film, The Best Man, the initial film came out in 1999. The sequel didn't come out till 2013, right? So you're talking about a 14-year difference. You don't get to see a lot of films that deal with characters, that get to do that. It's not really a regular occurring event. So in that vein, I support that. I do enjoy seeing characters get to grow up and develop on screen. I like that in general. I'd like to see more of it, but it is something that I enjoy. And I can say when I was younger, when I remember going to see the first film. Oh man, I think let me see, 99. I was living in Oakland. I was living in Oakland with my then fiance. This was before I married my wife. And I remember us going down to see it. We went with a bunch of friends, and it was kind of like going to see Love Jones in the 90s. It was that kind of vibe where you had this kind of new neo soul kind of renaissance happening in music, and you also got to see a little bit of it in film. Young black actors, beautiful folk on screen, and this is at a time where you could do these kind of films. I recently watched a clip with oh man, what is his name? Matt Damon. And I remember Matt Damon did you can find it on YouTube pretty readily. He did a short where he talked about the radical shift in the film industry in the 1990s. And one of the things he said was you could make films like Good Will Hunting and others like that at that time, because a lot of those films could rely on DVDs, right? So, if they didn't, recoup their value in the theater, you could rely on a whole nother part B coming along afterward 6 months later when the film hit the DVD thing. Once that was wiped out, right, films had to meet their numbers earlier on. And what he was saying is this wiped out a lot of the kind of low budget, kind of films that would hit the screen. It changed the game. And so we're seeing that happen. But what I have seen at the same time is over the last 50 years, a dramatic drop in the cost of creating a film. So if you go to BET and some of these smaller channels, you'll see a lot of fairly independent black films that are made on a fairly low budget, with B actors and sometimes C and below actors, but with stories, black stories. The only problem for a masculinist is that many of the stories are designed to cater to their primary demographic, right? Black women. So a lot of the stories tend to be very feminist, deferring in their structure and their posture, if you will. And the best man is no different. The only difference I would give it is that there are occasional moments where you have a strong statement that'll be made here and there. Occasional moments. They're not constant, but they're occasional. And the reason I wanted to cover this is because, the series makes statements on its own about black relationships. And I think it's important that we kind of look at that and decide what our thoughts are about that. Now, I had a clip that I was going to show, but I think it might have got pulled down because I don't even see it. And I remember sharing it on my social media for a minute because it was a pivotal clip, but it has, I don't know. I think that was just before I got kicked off of Facebook for a while. So I don't know if they took it down or did whatever to it. Let me try and see if it's elsewhere on YouTube. Let's see. Bear with me for a moment. Try and see if I can pull it up in here. I gotta remember the names of the characters for this search. There we go. Okay. Let's see if it'll give me this. If it won't, we'll just have to go describe it a little bit later. But, I was hoping we could at least watch a very short clip of it. But I don't. Ooh. Nope. Damn. It was the most pivotal part of the film for me, and I had the clip and it vanished. So, that's all right. It would have probably just hit me with a copyright issue anyway. Shout out to AB Media, Jay Cleveland, what's up? Tim Howard, Brother Hey Rue in the house. What's going on? Spain Man. We got the master teacher BGS up in here. What's good? Brandon, what's going on with you, man? Hope you're well. So I hope everybody's well. But anyway, put the link out there again. And like I said, you're welcome to come up. And the way I'm going to approach this, I'm really just going to we're going to talk about these couple by couple. and kind of do it that way. And that'll give us an opportunity to kind of do that. So it'll be a little down and dirty, but, we could spread that out and engage whatever aspect of this series you're interested in, because there's a lot here. There's a lot that goes on in these series that are subtle, under the table statements. Brother Rais, what's up? Good to see you in here, man. A lot of statements that are made in here that I think are, statements about normalizing very particular types of Black relationships. And I'll say in the, just the overarching structure of it, they tend to be, suggesting that these relationships need to defer to her, right? They need to be very feminine, deferring in that regard. She gets to decide what goes on. Her feelings get to dictate how things are done, how things are interpreted. And the very idea of right and wrong is determined by how she feels. Now, this is how, this is kind of that happy wife, happy life kind of narrative, but we're seeing it in this series, and we've seen it for years, actually. But like I said, there'll be moments where the men will get to say something, and then that kind of dissipates for a little while. But let's kind of go through some of the basics, just so we're aware of who we're dealing with. I'm really mad I can't get that clip, though. I was really looking forward to that. So anyway, I think they always get me on this part. Is there any way to get this to stop playing? There we go. I think I always get hit with some kind of copyright warning whenever I go to IMDb. But here we go. So let me go ahead and share the screen. All right. So this is the original. All right. The original Best Man, 1999, right? And it's a trip to even look at the pictures around some of these people because, goodness, I'm talking 24, almost 25 years ago. Damn. Almost 25 years ago, y'all. Anyway, I remember going to the theater to see it, and, 25 years later, they're still going. But you can see we had Taye Diggs starring as Harper Stewart, Nia Long as Jordan, Morris Chestnut as Lance, Harold Perrineau as Julian, Terrence Howard as Quentin, Sanaa Lathan as Robin, Monica Calhoun as Mia, Melissa D'Souza as Shelby, and then a number of backup folk. Regina Hall as Candy, number of others kind of playing the backup roles. But, you didn't get to see a whole lot of Black faces on the screen like this. So you had this kind of renaissance, as I said, in the 90s that came about. This is directed by Malcolm Lee, written by Malcolm Lee. And so might as well delve into a little bit of Malcolm Lee himself. So you can see him right there on the left, writer, director, and producer, right? Born in 1970, known for Girls Trip, not one of my favorite films by any measure. And he does what he has to do. He leans in on what Black women want to hear, what they want to see. But like I said, it's him. People like him, they'll occasionally let a moment of masculinity on the screen, which is more than we get to see in a lot of instances, at least until you had the advent of Black male spaces on social media, where basically Black men are creating their own content and waiting for permission less and less. Right? Shout out to Tim Howard for the support. He says the brainwashing from the media. Thanks for exposing them, Doc. SYSBM. Appreciate that. Yep. Appreciate that support. But Malcolm, you can see is one of the figures in here trying to kind of, profit off of that a little bit. He's related to Spike Lee, his cousin, and Spike's sister, of course, Shwa Lee. Got Bill Lee, a number of others in there. So coming out of the family. Right, they're keeping it all together. So the second one we had didn't come out until 2013, and this one is the Best Man Holiday. Right, many of us didn't expect this one. We didn't see it coming. Kind of caught many of us off guard. I actually wrote one of my first blog pieces when I started my blog, advocating for Black men. I actually started it off the death of Heavy D. I wouldn't say I was an avid Heavy D fan, like I had every album. I just had a great amount of respect for Heavy D. And when he passed away, I felt like I wanted to say something. but I didn't have any place to put it. So that's when I kind of created my blog, and I ended up using it for my classes and so on and so forth. And then eventually I did one on 12 Years a Slave. I did a review of Best Man Holiday, because they delved into the drama. Now, just in terms of entertainment, character drama, relationship, kind of thing, it was interesting. The series has been consistently interesting. Now you can see it written and directed by Malcolm Lee as well, right? Same cast of characters. So they kept it pretty consistent. Most everybody came back for each one, and that's another problem a lot of these films have, a lot of these projects have. People won't always come back. So it was good to see folks do that. And like I said, for those who want to come up, we can chop it up about the particular films themselves. Then we get to this here. Now, this is where I always get a little copyright statement. So, Best Man, the final chapters, right? Based on characters by Malcolm Lee, but written by Dana Lynn North. Now, some of this is starting to make a little more sense. Let's find out some things about Dana Lynn. All right. All right. There we go. So, Dana Lynn North, native of Kansas City, Missouri, graduate of USC School of Cinematic Arts, began her writing career with a freelance episode for the critically acclaimed Lifetime drama Any Day Now, and joined the writing staff during the third season. Then joined Soul Food in 2000. Okay, so she was active in that push. For its fifth and final season. Okay, so the Soul Food series. Right. Writer for the first two seasons of Veronica Mars with Kristen Bell. I used to watch that show. Interesting. Lincoln Heights. I remember that show. Okay, so she's been around. An In Vogue Christmas in 2014. Brief stints on hit shows Switched at Birth and Single Ladies. She's now executive producer of the hit show Insecure, created by and starring Issa Rae. Right. Okay, so we can see kind of vibe coming in, and as I said, it's very consistent with what we've already been seeing. This kind of leaning in on prioritizing and centering Black women's interests, and we can see that even framed in the writing. So it appears that she is the one who developed this, using probably having Malcolm Lee's permission, but it doesn't list him as writer. It just says creator. So he may not have had as involved a hand this time around. Let's see a little bit more. That is not the one I meant to press. Back up a little bit. Come on. All right. All cast and crew. All right. So, okay. So, directed. So we had Malcolm direct 4 episodes. Robert Townsend directed 2. Stacey Muhammad 1. Charles Stone the third 1 episode. And then we see the writing credits. Nicole Fiel. I don't know how to pronounce that. I probably just butchered it. Let's actually see who this is. Okay. All right. She's got another Black woman. All right. We'll have good brother Malika up in here. What's going on with you, Malika?
Peace and love to you, good brother.
Peace to you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Good to hear your voice. It's always a treat when you come through. We're just kind of looking at some of the writing credits. So as we can see, we got Malcolm apparently. Okay. So it's saying it keeps saying based on characters created by, developed. He does have one direct writing credit here for 3 episodes. Okay. James Bland, Lori Lakin, Wayne Connolly, Ayanna Floyd, Cameron Johnson, Zoe Marshall. Looks like they tried to mix it up a little in terms of the writing. That's what we're looking at. Right. So in regard to the series, they kept it Black. They leaned it a little more, I would say, on the backstage end of things, in the interest of Black women, but nevertheless, it's still heavily Black. At least it's not like The Woman King, where you have a couple white women writing all the material. So they didn't jump off that ledge. But did you get a chance to see the series?
No, I didn't. My mom had watched it and she had told me, and a couple of people at work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard a few reviews and I was like, I don't want to see this madness.
You didn't want to go there.
No, because I heard Angry Man's review, and one of my coworkers, my supervisor, she's a female. She was telling me about it,
Okay.
and I've learned to just listen. Listen, listen, listen. Let the red pill just listen. And when I heard how the way Sanaa Lathan's character was, I was like, oh, because I'm a big fan of Sanaa Lathan.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And my mom was saying it was good. And I got to remember, my mom's a boomer, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Right.
we all get caught up because, like how you said, this is a historic movie. And these characters and these actors and actresses are the same age as us. And so was Malcolm Lee.
Right. Right.
And I love the first one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had my reservations for the second one.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Well, the first one was very good because they were in the 20s and there was, the cheating situation, the incident, but also the great thing was that you saw positive, young, successful Black people. They were on the cusp to making things great.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And which led some 10, 15 years later to the second one. All of them did well. All of them are in their perspective fields doing well, doing great. Even Melissa D'Souza's character, she became like,
Right. One of the
a
house.
reality show
Yeah.
jump off, and she made money off of that.
Yeah. Which I didn't see coming from the first movie. I was kind of surprised. Usually those women, because if you remember in the first movie, she was a pain.
Yes.
She was a pain in everybody's ass. She exploited, so the character played by Harold Perrineau, she really punked him and really, kept doing so. So those women that I remember from undergrad, we just stopped hanging with. Like they weren't around in his circle anymore as we got older. I was surprised they brought her back and that she was still involved. But go ahead.
But what got me with the second one, and I'm glad. Can I say something, man? This is a dream that came true. I think this is a dream that I had fruition. I wanted you to talk about The Best Man.
Okay.
And I wanted to talk about the second one
Mm-hmm.
and just certain things that we've seen. Well, first of all, Harp never really kind of fully got over his wife, Regina Hall, being a stripper.
Oh,
and this is
okay. You're talking about Harold Perrineau's character? Okay.
He married this woman. This woman helped him build a school, a charter school.
Mm-hmm.
Very rare that you see a private charter school for Blacks,
right,
or run by Black men.
Right.
He had to kind of kiss the butt of this white man to try to get some extra funding for it.
Mm-hmm.
But he had friends that were rich and wealthy.
Right.
He had Morris Chestnut's character, who was a retired football star that got into business. Nia Long, she was in production. You had 3 other people that he couldn't go to other people and ask them because he felt too prideful to ask his friends for money. But you can go ask this white man, and you have to put on this air, and you got to try to be something that you're not.
Right.
That's what got me.
Well, let me back it up this way. In case there's anyone here that hasn't seen the films, we'll just give it a little context. So as the good brother was saying, the first one dropped in 99. And if you're Gen X, this mirrored our lives. I mean, in 99, I'd finished undergrad in 96. 96. I did my master's in 97. So by the time you get to 99, I'm living in Oakland. I'm engaged. I'm trying, and here's the thing. I'm trying to figure out where I want to go with my life. Right.
Exactly.
That was a period where I had assumed I was going to stay at Temple, where I did my master's and do my doctorate. But Temple was so horrendous in terms of the climate at the time that I finished the master's and left. And it took me 3 years before I decided what to do. So I had this 3-year period in limbo where I was working for the school district in San Francisco. I was working in East Palo Alto for this nonprofit for one of the players of the 49ers, had working with kids. And it was a real precarious time period. And this film comes out in a similar way, right? Because the film doesn't start with them in college. College is a flashback. The film starts with them a few years after college, where they're all kind of catching up with each other. And at this time period, I'm doing kind of the same thing. So, the movie gets points because, it's, when you see a movie that actually parallels your life and you see people that actually look like you on screen and they're at the same time period in their life, that's one of the reasons Love Jones probably gets way more credit in my head than it should. And when I go back and look at these things, the blue pill nature of it is actually sickening. But part of the reason it has, this kind of vaunted position in my head is because of I was in a very similar place at the time the characters are dealing with this stuff in the movies. And I think Best Man is one of those films as well. So I had a cadre of friends, and that's one of the things I'm trying to tell my son about college. And I say this every time I give a graduation speech: the people you went to college with, you're going to be connected to in some way to the day you die. I got a cadre of friends, as I said, that I'm still connected to. We still communicate. We got text streams and phone calls and all that. We still communicate almost on a weekly basis. And these are guys that I met in 92, right? So that resonated with me from the Best Man series. But this particular group, you got these four brothers here who, in the first film, they're kind of the focal point. I think since then, it's kind of, they tried to balance it more, where you have male and female a little more. But at least in the first film, they were kind of the focal point.
You know why it was that, brother?
What'd you say?
You know why it was that?
Go ahead.
It was taken from Malcolm Lee's perspective. You gotta understand something.
Yeah.
This first movie is taken from the male perspective of how the way men think, the way what we're going through, like the infamous poker scene when they said the best P is new P.
Okay, right.
And all the men, and even when I was in the movie theater, a lot of the men started laughing, shaking their heads, and a lot of women were rolling their eyes and sucking their teeth and nudging them like, be quiet. But this is something that we all could relate to.
Which, by the way, the series ends on. It ends on the ritual of the poker game.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So just in terms of bookends, the film starts, the series starts with that in the first movie. They end the chapters, and this is playing on Peacock for those who are interested in watching it. It ends on the poker game because we know it's not just a poker game. Men don't just get together to talk. Men get together and engage each other over activities. We're fishing. We're going somewhere. We're doing, they tend to be activity driven. We're going to see a football game or whatever it is. It's an activity. We don't just get together and just sit in a room and sip coffee and talk. That's not usually how men socialize. So
and also you saw the friendships between these guys. Because remember in the second movie, Terrence, they're all on the football field. They're on the football field because Morris Chestnut, he's the football player, and he, family and friends can go on the football field. But Terrence Howard and Harold Perrineau have issues. But Terrence Howard revealed a sensitive side that even though he might say things to his friends and do anything, he would never put his hands on them. Because remember, he threw the football at Harold Perrineau and he says, "Man, you put your hands on me." And that was like
brothers.
Yeah, but then that was something that was very trying, that even though that he gave off this air as being like, the suave pimp, Matt guy, he valued his friendship. And he even called Tay Diggs on how the way he was acting as bullshit in the first movie. Another thing in the second movie, and I don't want to sound kind of out of place, but it got me. I was like, damn, Neil Long can't get a black man?
Well,
like everybody can come up, but okay, we just gonna put the white dude there. And I'm not saying anything, but like for real, this couldn't be a black guy. They couldn't sneak Lorenz Tate in there and give us some fan service. I mean, it was just like, all right. I like how the way Morris Chestnut was called on the carpet by his wife, that you never got mad at me for cheating.
Well, let's
Because
back
he had,
up. Hold on. Well, let's back up. Let's put it in order, because again,
uh-huh,
we're gonna acknowledge those who may not have seen it. So, as everybody should know at this point, we're delving into spoilers. So in the first film, which is what Malika's talking, he's going back from the first and the second. In the first film, you got this group of friends, out of college for a few years, and one of the biggest points is that so you have Lance, played by Morris Chestnut, what? Morris Chestnut, who is in the NFL at this point, or he's just starting in the NFL at the beginning of the first one. And they
uh-huh,
have the occasional flashback into college where they're all friends. And at that time, Lance is a star college player, and his girlfriend, which is not pictured because it's not pictured in this one because I took an old one. There we go. His
uh-huh.
girlfriend, played by Monica Calhoun, actually sleeps with his best friend to get revenge for how much he's sleeping around. Right?
Uh-huh.
He's a college star. He's doing his thing. He's got girls on him now. He's also a practicing Christian. And what's up, 72 Pass? Exactly. Smoking cigars, you know the deal. But anyway, so he's a college star, but he's grappling with his religion. He's grappling with the guilt of cheating on the woman he loves. And so when she finally gets tired of it, she decides to seduce his best friend, played by Tay Diggs, right? Who is kind of he plays the kind of heart of the show. He's the primary character that they keep going back to, in a way. Harper, Harper's a writer. So we got Morris Chestnut, who's playing Lance, the football player. Harper is the writer. Harold Perry knew. In the first film, I think he's working with kids. He's trying to find his way, but he's kind of in education. And then you have Quentin, played by Terrence Howard. And at the time, he's trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life. He's kind of all over the place.
He's drifted.
He's drifted. His father is a hotel owner, hard worker, and he even talks. Well, we'll get to that. But he's kind of all over the place. And this is where they all are in their lives for the most part. They're trying to figure out where they're going to go and what they're going to do. But Harper is grappling with his own guilt because he slept with his best friend's woman, right? And so the beginning of the film is Lance about to get married, right? He's about to marry his college sweetheart, played again by Monica Calhoun. Let's see, there we go, right there. So this is what you have in the first movie. It's all built around this wedding, which is why it's called The Best Man. And in the midst of it, the best man has slept with his best friend's wife in college. Lance did not know this, right? But we know that Harper writes this book that blows up. I mean, he is starting to get on the circuit. Oprah wants him to show up on her show. Now, this is Oprah in 1999. So what does Oprah mean for a young man just starting with his first book? What does it mean to be on her show, right? But in this book, he uses his friends as the basis for the characters he creates. But he's written in some things that definitely would let let them know, if they were there at that time, that something went down. That it went down, actually, right? And so there's kind of an admittance in the book of what happened, even though he never actually told Lance about it, and neither did Monica Calhoun's character. Neither one of them had ever told Lance what happened. And so as they're gathering for this wedding, what Harper is trying to do is keep the book away from Lance so Lance doesn't read it and figure it out. Pretty much everybody else in the clique has read it and they figured it out.
Uh-huh.
Pretty much. So he's hiding it from Lance. Lance is about to get married, but that kind of thing doesn't stay hidden very long, right? You want to talk a little bit about what happens when how Lance figures it out and what happens from there?
Well, they're at a bachelor party.
Mm-hmm.
And at the bachelor party, you got strippers and people are drinking. But Tay Diggs, Harp has a copy of his book, and he has certain pages there.
It's been passed around.
Yeah.
and he finds it, I want to say, in Lance's bag, and he hides it. He takes it away from Lance's, Lance's stuff, and he hides it in his own bag.
Yeah.
And Lance sees it. But go ahead.
And Lance goes in the bathroom, and he gets to the part where it's supposed to be Taye Diggs and Monica Calhoun. They had sex. And Morris Chestnut puts one and one together and say, "Oh, that's my woman and that's my boy."
Yeah, I think he actually tried to switch the characters, but because that clique were all there, they can see past the letters on the page.
Yeah.
Everybody who's read it figured it out. Right.
They know who the pseudonyms are. They know who's who and who's not.
Right.
There's a point even when what's the name? The actor that played James Rhodes in the first Iron Man movie. Help me out.
Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard even said to me, he said, "Damn, brother, could you even embellish on me a little bit more?" But Morris Chestnut reads everything and he busts out, and at the party he starts beating Taye Diggs' butt. And he beats his butt so much, he's about to do a Suge Knight, throw him off the balcony and hold him over there. And all his friends are trying to hold him back.
Right.
But Morris Chestnut, he's a football player. So
right. Yeah.
So in parallel to this, Taye Diggs is engaged to Sanaa Lathan. And Sanaa Lathan...
Not yet. That's at the end where he proposes to her.
That's right. He proposes. They're living together. I'm sorry.
Right.
They're living together as boyfriend and girlfriend. And she is trying to become a chef. And I think she's in culinary school.
Right. Well, you know what? She's kind of a jack of all trades. And they all kind of make fun of him because she kind of flits from one thing to the next. But here's the key to her, though. She's not a part of the clique.
Yeah. But also she feels insecure because she's on the outside.
Exactly.
And also there was this underlying attraction with Nia Long and Taye Diggs.
Right.
They, in college, they were both on the school newspaper. And there was one time where they almost got together and had sex.
Exactly.
And in the background, we know in the first movie there has been times since they graduated, people have met up, and Sanaa Lathan could still see the kind of connection, the attraction, and how compatible Taye Diggs and Nia Long is. So she's feeling insecure.
And this is something that goes through all three projects. It's there the whole time, this connection. And again, for those of us who are coming of age at the same time as the film, all the way to this moment, we know what it is to have a kind of connection with somebody. Sometimes there's that person you never quite went there with, but it was always kind of an unspoken thing. And you meet together years later, and sometimes you find out it's still there. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what you see in Taye Diggs and Nia Long's character. They have this thing, they have this connection, but they've never really acted on it, and they've always kind of flirted with it, and that persists all the way up to the end of the series. But
wow,
but no, you're right. So you've laid out some of the sexual tension, some of the issues, and then of course the big push in the first movie is how is Lance going to deal with this? Because right around the time he finds out about it the night before the wedding. And so on the morning of the wedding, the guys have not found him. They don't know where he's been. He shows up to the church, pretty much dressed in the same clothes, and he pretty much shows up to end the wedding. And because of his religious, beliefs, Taye Diggs' character Harper, upon threat of getting his ass whooped again, gets him to pray, right? And so basically what you see happening is Lance deciding to marry his fiance. Now the trip about it is she doesn't know about any of this tension. The whole movie. She doesn't know that Lance has figured out that she slept with his best friend. She doesn't know that Lance is pissed about it. She doesn't know any of this. She's just, a woman on wedding day who's nervous. And so when they get married, Lance is crying in the ceremony because one, he loves her, but at the same time, he's picturing her having sex with his best friend and trying to put his love for her first. So they're going through their vows and he's going through all of that.
But also, can I put a pin in that?
Go ahead.
The book describes in graphic detail the sex that Taye Diggs and Monica Calhoun had. So you think you're at the altar with your wife to be, and you're picturing your best friend screwing your wife. It's like that old Eddie Murphy Raw comedy skit. Picture your boy having sex with your girl.
Right. But you know what's worse? What's worse about that now, though? Because now it wouldn't be a section in a book. It would be a video.
Exactly.
It'd have been a video on somebody's phone, and you might actually be watching the video.
That's crazy.
I don't know if the wedding would have went through if we had smartphones, but anyway, because it's some shit that's just a little too real when you got to see it. But,
exactly.
So we get to the what do you call it, the celebration after the wedding. I forget the term, right? They're all in the wedding hall or whatever.
The reception.
Reception. Thank you. And Lance is still, he's particularly pissed at Harper still. We see an exchange with Quentin, Terrence Howard's character, and Lance. Quentin and Harper, played by Taye Diggs, because Taye is going to get up and read some things he wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the relationship between Quentin and Harper is interesting because in the first movie, Quentin is he's just kind of a vagabond, damn near. He's talented, he's intelligent, but he's undirected. He doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. And Harper kind of gets on him about that because Harper's very type A, very focused.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do this. And so there's always back and forth. And Quentin feels like Harper's always judging him. So here you have an instance where Quentin figures out very early on what Harper did in college and is challenging him to step up and actually be a better man. It's an interesting thing because you don't expect, Quentin's character is just, he's really kind of, he's kind of, he's like a trickster. And
but you know what else he is?
But just real quick, you don't generally see films where the trickster character is actually wise, actually trying to do something good. Usually the trickster is just played for comic relief. But here you have Quentin actually pushing Harper to be a better man. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Quentin's the conscience. Quentin had no... Quentin's the one that got the strippers. Quentin's the one that told Harold Pinu, don't you dare call your girl. Have fun.
Exactly. Exactly.
Quentin always confronted Monica Calhoun. And she could never, they were always at each other, but Quentin knew how to get under her crawl. But she also knew how to get under his. But the thing what Quentin did, when, like you said, he was, what's the name, was about to give the speech, the best man gives the speech at the reception dinner. Quentin, Taye Diggs' character, he hid behind his words and his writing because that was his strength, but that was also his weakness, and used it as a crutch.
Yeah, exactly.
Quentin grabs the notebook out of his hand and slams it down. And he looks at him. Terrence Howard has that piercing stare, and he looked at him. And he was, and like how you said, be a man, but like really say what's in your heart.
Yeah.
And when he went in his heart,
yeah,
he realized he had to not be selfish. And that's when he really realized what he had, his friendship, but also he had his woman. And that's when he proposes to Sanaa Lathan, and she accepts it.
He has to open up in a way that he's not used to, and of course he's also an atheist. So there's a religious undercurrent to the film, attention as well, because he's an atheist, and his best friend Lance is a practicing avid Christian, and so part of him letting go, was to accept the existence of God. It's not that he becomes a Christian, but he kind of accepts that he can't know everything and control everything because he's fairly controlling. You know
Yes.
what I mean? So they work through a number of these tensions. But I got to go back to Quentin for a second, man, because that was one of the things that I liked about the series. And it's something you said that brought me off to it. So him and Harold Perrineau kind of were closer. The two
Mm-hmm.
characters. So out of the clique, Lance and Harper, Morris Chestnut and Taye Diggs were close, and then Harold Perrineau and Terrence Howard's characters were close. And they were kind of like kids, and they stayed that way throughout all three series. And we have friends like that. So I would say it was
Mm-hmm.
written well. But at the same time, you have this undercurrent of being grown that's kind of mixed in there that I really liked. And so whenever he would see his friend Julian, played by Harold Perrineau, being disrespected, being emasculated by his girlfriend Shelby, who's controlling, who's exploitive, who's just taking
Narcissistic.
advantage of him, narcissistic. And throughout the entire film, you're waiting for him. They call him Merch. His name
Yeah,
is
that's the name.
Merch. And they keep waiting for Merch to, grab his nuts and stand up. And at the end, you do kind of get that, or close to the end, you get that moment. And he meets another woman. He leaves, Shelby for her. So you get to finally see Merch stand up for himself. But it's Quentin that's pushing him to do it the
Mm-hmm.
entire time. So the fuck up, the vagabond, the trickster, is the one that, as you said, is the conscience of these men. And
Mm-hmm.
that continues into the second film. I mean, there's a point where he actually says out loud, "Are y'all gonna get your balls back?" At a certain point. So
Mm-hmm.
Clinton he's advocating for this kind of masculinity, even in the first film and all the way through the second. There's something that happens to that in the third that we're gonna get to. But let's talk a little bit about the second movie, just so we can get everybody on up on board on that. So we get to the Best Man Holiday. And so the Best Man Holiday comes about 13, 14 years later, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, they're gathering together. Oh, wait a minute. Having some trouble. Where'd it go? Crap. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. So they get back together to celebrate Christmas. And this is mainly at the behest of Monica Calhoun's character, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Morris Chestnut's wife in the show, right? She's calling everybody together so that they can have this gathering at their mansion, for Christmas. Now, I will say, and this is something you alluded to earlier, that everybody was doing well. I'm not necessarily a fan of these kind of films where you don't really have a realistic picture of Black economics. Nobody really wants to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a way it can be done tactfully and intelligently. You don't necessarily have to go back to good times to present Black life, but this kind of middle class aspirational shit gets on my nerves from time to time. So, you know, but they do well. You know what? Let me give credit where credit is due. They do kind of play with it a little, because Harper at this point, his career is not going well. His next books do not do well. He's having money issues. But you don't see it. I mean, everybody's still living well, and this is probably a time period where folks are living off credit. But they do kind of touch on it a little bit. But when you get too many of these films where everybody's staying in these mansions, and this is one of the things I do with my students, I have us look up how much places like that would cost to live when we break down films, because
Mm-hmm.
in many ways it contradicts reality. But for Lance's character, it's appropriate. He's a successful NFL player, and at this point, he's coming toward the end of his career. He's had a stellar career. He's broken records. He's about to set a new record, and all the friends get together at their house for the Christmas holiday. Anything you want to say about the beginning of this one?
They did a great flashback montage.
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
you see, because in films they try to, especially if it's a sequel,
Mm-hmm.
and the best way to tell something is to give a good flashback sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, Morris Chestnut is he's a star football player. He's smart. That in his late 30s, early 40s, he's going to go into retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Nia Long, she gets, what is she? Well, this is pre how the way the internet has become.
Mm-hmm.
She, before social media has taken over, she, in the first movie, she is working as a production assistant. Now she is like she's a VP for this production firm in
Real
New
quick,
York.
real quick. Roaring Son, you ain't shit for that. That's hilarious. I'm sorry. Ricky finally beat me.
Ricky!
All right, but go ahead.
And one thing we realized, Sanaa Lathan, she's a successful chef, isn't she? In the second movie,
By the time we get to the second one, yeah, I think she's really doing well
and
with
she's
that.
doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And Taye Diggs is feeling bad, and this is another thing where we see how the way men want to be strong and masculine and still want to take care of everything.
Mm-hmm.
She's taking care of the family, and also she's about 8 or 9 months pregnant. So
well, and they've lost pregnancies before. That's one of the key undercurrents here. So the running gag, as far as Harper is concerned, in that sense, is that he's having issues with sperm. He's having issues with impregnating his wife, even though they've lost pregnancies, I believe, at least one. But but as far as this film, she is pregnant, and the underlying worry is not only money, since Harper's books are not doing well, but that she doesn't lose this pregnancy as well.
Yeah.
So that's one of the tensions that they're dealing with as a couple. As you said, Nia Long's character, this is the gentleman that she's dating, and she has problems with being vulnerable.
Yeah.
She has problems with, expressing love, expressing, vulnerability, expressing a need for others, and it actually gets on his nerves. It actually gets on his nerves. So that's one of the tensions they have.
Mm-hmm.
Here you have the former couple from the first movie who are no longer together. So Harold's character is married to
Regina
Hall's character, and as you said earlier, Shelby here has now become one of the housewives. So she's becoming popular. She's a star, so to speak, on her own, and she's kind of branching out into various businesses off of that image. And she's still trying to seduce him, right? Because she doesn't get along with his wife. Right?
Can I touch on something with Regina Hall and Harold Perrineau?
Mm-hmm.
They did something that was very beautiful. She helped build that school with him.
Yeah.
And one thing we didn't touch on, even though that she was a stripper in the first movie, she was in college and she was stripping to pay her way through college. And that's somehow they were speaking at the bachelor party. She said something about some literary reference, and Harold Perrineau said something. They looked at each other and they were talking.
Yeah.
And that kind of drew them together.
Audre Lorde, feminist theoretician and poet or writer,
yeah. And what they did was and also they had 2 children. And what you seen was they were a very, very happy, loving couple. She had his back. Whatever he wanted to do, she was there. He was a good father. She was by his side. But as we're coming into 2013, social media has taken place. And when you take pictures and you put stuff on the internet, it stays.
Yeah.
So what had happened was, when she was a stripper, she went to a white frat house, and some white boys were filming her going into the bathroom with a college guy. And somehow it got out on the net. And
but the difference was, though, she was already stripping, but now we're looking at her actually having sex for money.
Yeah.
And this is and it's purely coincidence, but this is what they're looking at in this very scene. They're looking at the video, and all you really saw is her go into the bedroom and close the door. But she's been stripping. She's at this party. She goes in this room with this white dude and closes the door. And so in this conversation that they actually have from this image on screen, they're trying to, really help Murch figure out how to deal with it. One of the suggestions is maybe she actually didn't have sex, but they're actually trying to talk him through it because this is becoming a huge concern. As a matter of fact, he's lost a major donor for the school behind this very video. It was actually one of the major donor who pulls out that gives him the video and says, "This is the reason I'm withdrawing my funds, because you have this woman, your wife, who apparently was prostituting, and she's on YouTube." Right. So this is a tension that he's dealing with, and he's sharing it with his boys. And of course, Shelby finds it, and and she tries to use that. And eventually his wife figures out, or actually, I think he blurts it out. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because
In
they were
very,
about to
very
have
effeminate
sex.
manner. Yeah, they were about to have sex when he in a weak manner, he blurts it out, as opposed to just sitting her down and saying, "Look, this is what's going on." Taking charge of the situation and breaking down what his concern is. Instead of doing that, he kind of passive aggressively throws it at her in this insecure fashion. And of course, she didn't know anything about it being on YouTube or any of that. So she's embarrassed, she's frustrated. And, as she tries to leave, Shelby confronts her about it as well. And they get into a fist fight. So all kinds of tension there.
But this was something very prevalent, which you said with Harold Perrineau's character. As a man, and this is one thing, when I saw the movie, I said, but you met her as a stripper.
Yeah, that's what they said to her too. Right.
So I said, now, it's not like, now, no offense, and I hate to sound kind of tongue-in-cheek and very, corny, but he turned a hoe into a housewife.
Yeah, that was one of the discussions.
But the thing was, when you realize something, he had a woman that was a rider for him.
Right.
And my thing was, and I'm in the movie theater just under my breath, rocking back and just pissed.
Okay.
And I'm cussing at him. I said, you got a woman there. I said, she's got your back. You got beautiful kids.
Right.
I said, you got a friend who's one of your best friends is a major football player.
Right.
One of your other friends is a damn producer, a VP producer. Your other boy, and also Terrence Howard, he's working, and he has a high-paying job. You mean you couldn't get 3 of these people to help build up some money for you? You mean to tell me you got a guy who's a star football player and you got a woman who's a VP producer that they couldn't help raise some more money? And I'm saying, man, fuck that old white dude, man. But and that's what pissed me off, because how the way we become so drawn into thinking that the white man's ice is colder. We're thinking that, oh, I need his money.
Well, remember though, they're sitting at the table, and Quentin kind of alludes to your very point. He's like, you know what? Forget him. We can raise the money right here. How much do you need? And when he tells them, even Quentin goes, oh, hell no. It's a whole nother level that's needed. But, to your point, by the end of the film, that very thing ends up happening via Shelby. Shelby actually gives what they don't tell us how much, but what's assumed to be a sizable donation that keeps them going. So your point actually stands, and in a way they dealt with that and conceded to your point in the course in the film itself, right? So you're right.
And the funny thing was, this is my belief, the situation with Shelby and Harold Perrineau's character. She didn't want him back. She just wanted to see if she could get with him and mess with him just to spite his wife. Because even though she got him back, she would have treated him and thrown aside, because he's a normal, everyday guy. He wants to run a school. Yeah, Shelby got married like 3 times.
They were highly incompatible. Yeah.
Yes. She's got married 3 times since they broke up. And now Harold Perrineau's married. He's he's a square dude. His wife is square, and they have a beautiful life and beautiful kids. One of the beautiful scenes was when Regina Hall comes back with the kids, and his little girls ran to him, and they're
Mm-hmm.
hugging him, and
Mm-hmm.
he hugs them, and she gives him a look where you could tell she loves him and she sees that he's a good man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was a look where I saw that she don't want to let him go.
Yeah.
And when he came to her and he looked at her, and this was very good acting because he had looked at her, and Regina Hall gave him that look that she knew that she loved him.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw how the way that this man is with her children. And she wanted to say, "Can we just get over this?" And he was like, "Yeah." And that was like, boom, that was something that was there.
There was I saw a similar, and I don't mean similar in the sense that it was the same thing, but similar in terms of the dramatic depth of dealing with mature relationships at the age where you're having kids and you're navigating work life.
Mm-hmm,
Same kind of thing happened with Tay Diggs' character in Sanaa Lathan.
mm-hmm,
Right around the time where he too passive aggressively lets her know he's afraid about them losing the pregnancy. He's the money's not going well, as far as that. He tries to keep all that from her, and then kind of emotionally explodes in a way where she's got to deal with it. And so she kind of checks him on that, but they have this mature conversation about, which really comes down to certain types of gender roles, right? Like, as a man, you're protector, you're provider, but you're also performing a certain type of emotional labor where you're shielding your wife from certain types of difficulties that, you don't, So now understand, I don't think it was just a generic thing. He was shielding her from it because she was pregnant and they had already lost pregnancies.
mm-hmm,
So he was worried that had he told her about their financial straits, had he told her about the various things going on, his fear of even her losing another baby, if he told her that it would cause her stress, which might cause the loss of another pregnancy. So he's trying to perform a certain type of emotional labor, but at the same time, his own insecurities are piling up, and it all kind of erupts very passive aggressively. And she's crying, but she's also saying, look, we got to stick together and handle this. And you got to be upfront with me. So they have this very mature kind of conversation about what that means. Right. Meanwhile, she's still observing this link that he has to Nia Long's character, even though she's
mm-hmm,
with this white man. There are moments where they're having, and the conversations they're having are fairly innocent. He's not actually
mm-hmm.
doing anything. In the first movie, he actually almost had sex with her.
Yeah.
The only problem is he had just gotten beaten up before that, so that ruined the vibe. But actually, had he not gotten into that fight with Lance, he was planning to have sex with Nia Long's character. It just didn't happen. And so by the time you get to this film, they're actually not doing anything. They're having conversations because he needs to write a book about Lance's life to reinvigorate his career. Lance is still upset with him about the first book. And Nia Long is actually trying to motivate him to follow through and get Lance to work with him on this book. So she's actually supportive. But she also, because she's that kind of a friend, she's got, she's read his books, the stuff that didn't get published and all that kind of stuff. And, Tay Diggs' wife gets a little insecure whenever those kind of things pop up in
Mm-hmm,
conversation. Because she keeps being reminded how close they are,
mm-hmm,
where Nia Long has access to things that, she herself hasn't engaged. I mean, Nia's read, his stuff that she hasn't read, so these kind of things produce. And then too, she's pregnant. She's like 9 months along. And so
mm-hmm.
she's insecure about how she looks. Nia Long is, of course, not pregnant and still fine. So, so there's some tensions there as well. What else we got? We know that Terrence Howard and Shelby slept together at the end of the first film, right? So there's still some sexual tension there in the midst of all the arguing and the back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. But the guiding, kind of crux of this second film is that Monica Calhoun's character has cancer.
Mm-hmm. And she
And
only has a few
yeah,
weeks or a few months left to live.
exactly.
And one of her dying wishes is that she wants to have all her best friends
Yes.
together. And
Yes.
what she also really wants is for Lance and Hart to really bury the hatchet.
Yes.
Because one thing
Yeah.
that is shown for the two movies, even with the women, there is a friendship. There's a friendship that Monica Calhoun realizes that Harp and Lance have.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the movie, Lance has this very kind of curt talk towards Harp.
Mm-hmm.
And he still looks at it and thinks of him like, yeah, all right. Da 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 da. And he says, "Oh, your children are beautiful." And he's like, "Thank you." And he's just very, very kind of curt.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, he's kind of closed off. He's still harboring
he's
pain
yeah.
from before.
But
And she is saying you're gonna need each other.
yes.
And he refuses to, he really does not want to accept and forgive Harper. Yeah, even though his wife is trying to tell him you're gonna need him.
But she said, I don't want to push it if you want to get to the point where she really has that talk with him
Yeah, let's
about
get there.
forgiveness.
Yeah, let's go there because we really need to get to the third series, but I want to get the
Her
foundation.
real big thing is she says, but how come you never confronted me? And you
Yes.
could see that he didn't do that. And I remember saying that 15 years ahead of time. Why didn't you confront her?
Yeah.
And did he ever talk about it? And he's like, and
Okay.
she kept saying, why didn't you confront me? Why didn't you get mad at me? You could see Morris Chestnut
Yeah.
not really want to talk about it. She says, get mad at me. And
Well,
she said, and she was basically telling him, if you don't get over this, you'll never ever be able to move on, especially when she passes and he doesn't want her to talk about her passing, even
well,
though that's a reality.
but he says something very key in that argument. He said, "We've never talked about this."
Mhm.
So clearly, at this point, she read the book. She knew that this had come out, but even in that, they never talked about it. And Lance gave all of his ire to Harper, and he kind of pedestalized his wife, which I think was cemented by the time she got, she had cancer. You know what I mean? And so she kind of checks him on it. So what we know of at this point is it, Lance figures out that as he and Harper are starting to remember their friendship, he sees that Harper is working on this book about his life that he didn't want to do behind his back, which for
Mhm.
him just confirms that Harper is a
Was using
horrible exploitive user, right? And so he's further pissed off, and in his frustration, that's when his wife confronts him and says, "Well, she said he and I did this, and yet you've never confronted me." She said, I'm the one that seduced him. I chose him. She
Uh-huh.
said, I knew how much it would hurt you, and I did this. You know what I mean? She pointed it out, which of course all the fellas were talking about at least since the first movie. She chose because
Uh-huh.
she did it on purpose to get back at him for all the other people he slept with. But the thing about it though is she didn't let him know. You kind of think that if she was trying to get revenge because he was sleeping around, that she'd get it back to him that she slept with somebody, but that's not what she did. She
Uh-uh.
slept with his best friend and she kept it a complete secret. And so at this
I
point,
think it would, but I think it wasn't just to get revenge on him. It was something that she did in order to get a level of relief for herself. Not saying it's right, but it might have been that big joker she might have been sitting on in her pocket. But she realized that it was more problematic than what it was because she realized that this is a bunch of pain that's been holding on for over 20 years. And it's
mhm,
been causing a great divide between
yeah.
two good friends. All right, I have a question to ask you. Monica Calhoun's character, who
Mhm.
was the one that she really, 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 really communed with in the second movie?
Quentin.
Exactly.
Yeah, they and that was a real interesting moment because I want to say at this point it was out that she was sick because they were actually smoking medical marijuana together,
Hmm.
and she asked him about the death of his mother. It's
Hmm.
real interesting because he starts to talk about his parents, who you finally get to see his father in this third series, but he talks about him in this particular moment. He says, "My father, so my mother gets sick. my father's response to that is to work.
Hmm.
And he doesn't say it, because he needs really this, this needs to be paid for. That's the other thing people don't want to talk about. You're dealing with a sick partner and you don't have a white collar insurance kind of, benefits package. A lot, you're paying out of pocket. And to my understanding, they didn't say what level he was working at a hotel, but he just said, when my mother got sick, my father's response was to work. Got to make. He said, got to make the money. Got to make the money. So he went to work while his mother is withering away. And so it's Monica Calhoun's character that actually gets Quentin to talk about that, because she's going through something similar. So they actually end up having a kind of connection there. But they don't play it as something potentially sexual or anything like that, which I respected. I did like that.
And it was showing that how the way, again, Quentin's the conscience of the group of people.
Yes.
And Monica Calhoun's character knew all the friends. She knew everyone. She knew what was going on. When Regina Hall and Melissa D'Souza was having the fight, Monica Calhoun's character comes out and she's just saying that stop. And you see her, was her wig off? Because she was taking chemo, right?
Yeah,
you saw that how it was really bad, and that caused a real situation that caused the episode.
She was spitting up blood or something of that nature, and that's where Harper found her on the floor.
Yeah,
spitting up blood, and that's when he discovered she had cancer, and they had been hiding it from the group.
Yeah, and then of course she passes away.
Right.
But one of the real big problems was one of the big showings was at the burial site. You see Morris Chestnut break down, and Harper runs to him, and they both fall. And you see Taye Diggs just hold him while he's on the ground, and he just held him, and he held him, and he held him, and he was just holding him. And what I liked was you see all the friends standing back and realize this is what Morris Chestnut's character need, and I love that part. Well, that showed that showed friendship and brotherhood.
It did. And shout out to 72 Paths. He points out that Mia and Shelby were sorority sisters.
That's right.
And Mia had made Nia Long's character godmother of her children.
That's right.
Which takes on whole new meaning when you know you're about to die. Takes on whole new meaning. For many people, being a godfather or godmother, you're just a friend of the family, and you come along, and every now and again you talk to the kid. It's usually very casual, but when you know that your friend is about to die, the kids are young, that takes on whole new meaning. And there's actually a moment where Nia Long's character is grappling with the reality of that, right? So all of that is happening in that way. Before the death, though, there's actually a moment, and this is something that I think is really kind of dismissed, where they demonstrate the importance and the power of a supportive woman, right? So in the first movie, we can see that it means something that Sanaa Lathan's character, at a moment when Harper doesn't know what to do, he doesn't know how to save the wedding, Lance is upset, she motivates him to go fix it. She motivates him not to give up. They're showing you the balance between the masculine and the feminine. The feminine as being an inspirational character, not being masculine and fixing it herself, but serving an inspirational role for him, right? So she motivates Harper to confront Lance and try and get the wedding back on track. In this film, we can actually see that same inspirational kind of thing taking place with, oh man, who was I just about to talk about? Damn it. Damn, why am I blanking? It was just in my head a second ago. Oh, yes, thank you. Mia. Yes, Mia and Lance. So Lance is playing a seminal game where there's an opportunity to break a major, I think it was a rushing record. And in that, he's having a hard time. He's not centered. So everything he tries doesn't work. He's frustrated. And the fans only know him to be very cool and collected, very, tied into his faith and so on and so forth. And nothing's really working out for him. So Mia says, "Give me the phone," right? And she calls him on the field, and we don't know what she says, but from there he goes, he's recentered. He talks to the coach. He's like, "Put me back in the game." And the coach is kind of like, "No." He said, "Give me the ball." And the coach takes one look at him and puts him back in the game, and you see him break the record from there. And the moment that he's able to finally do that, he looks at his boys, and this is the part I loved. I love that he just glanced at his boys, and they knew, get in the truck, time to get him home, because that is actually the night she dies.
Mm-hmm.
So they, as soon as the game is over, they jump in the truck, they go home. He literally runs up the stairs, kisses his kids real quick, and goes to spend his last night with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, so this film was made in 2013. My wife had passed away in 2009. So you got to understand, this series stayed close to my heart for a very strange set of reasons, because the first film came out where I was trying to figure out where to go with my life as they were.
Mm-hmm.
The second film comes out, and I didn't see this coming. I get blindsided by shit like this. I'm going to see this movie because, I just want to watch them, make me laugh or whatever. And they get real on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of these films will get real on you. And when she passed, I didn't see that coming. I really didn't think that they were going to show her die. And that was something that I'm grappling with. I'm a single father. I got this little boy that I'm raising by myself. I'm trying to figure out how to do this and not scar him for life in some kind of way. I'm coaching football, and I'm trying to do anything I can to keep the light in his eyes, because this little boy is upset because he can't remember how his mother smelled. He would wake up in the middle of the night crying. He can't remember what her voice sounded like. These are things that I'm trying to figure out. So I mess around and I'm sitting in the theater watching this movie, and they get real, and by the time she passes, the scene you're talking about, where he's standing in front of the grave and they're lowering her in it, there's a reality that hit him that she's gone. And I know if you haven't lost anybody close to you, it sounds stupid. It sounds obvious. It hits everybody differently, if it hits you at all. But I know for me, for some reason, it didn't happen till a while later. I was standing in the kitchen and I was about to cook my son dinner, and the reality hit. You can't govern when it hits. It doesn't have to make sense, and it often doesn't when it hits you. But in the film, they play it pretty straightforward. It hits him at the funeral, right? And you see him collapse, and you see Harper is the one to grab him. Harper, the one that he wants to push away, but he can't deny that that's his boy. You know what I mean? And that said a lot to me about friendship. It said a lot to me about love, especially between men. You know what I mean? I like the way Malcolm plays that, because it's real. I mean, I had boys that stood with me, man, and I'm telling you, the film reminded me of it. Film reminded. I've told this story before, and I'm gonna be real brief because I want to get back to this, but very briefly. One of my boys, I'm on the way home from the hospital where my wife has just passed away, and I send him a text, and immediately he calls me. So what's going on? I said, well, I said, Dad's passed away. Now he was coming home. He lived about 3.5 hours away. He lived in Long Beach, and he was coming home from the liquor store. He was sitting in his car, and he had gotten out of his car, and he was about to walk into his house. And he said, "Wait a minute, did you say Dez died?" And I'm in shock. I'm still, I look like somebody had hit me with a pan or something in my head. I'm in a fog, and I'm like, yeah, she just died. And he goes, huh, okay. He gets off the phone. Now, what I didn't know is that he was about to put the key in his door. He didn't even do it. He was putting it, by the time I told him he was about to put the key in the door, he turned around, got back in his car, and with the clothes on his back, drove straight to Fresno, 3.5 hours, nonstop. He just showed up at my door, and he didn't leave. I mean, my father, who lives, in the South, I rarely get to see him. He and my stepmother came out, family came, but my boy just showed up. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't wait for me to ask him to do shit. He would just look around for things to do. Now, I'm catatonic at certain moments. He's cleaning the garage. When I got to sit down with the funeral director and make decisions, my boy is sitting right there.
Mm-hmm.
and he's translating for me at moments when I'm in a fog. He's like, hey, Hasan, he's asking you, do you want the casket to show her? Do you want this? Do you want that? And he's helping me with it the whole time. Another one of my boys reaches out to me out of nowhere, and I think this is around the time where I'm struggling financially. I'm keeping everything afloat. I think my phone got cut off or something happened, and one of my boys just was like, I set up I forget how they do it now, but he set up a call phone number for me so people could reach me and I could call people and he paid the dime. You know what I'm saying? But these were my boys, and when the funeral actually happened, many of them showed up from all over, brothers I hadn't seen in a minute, and they just were there. So when I'm watching this film, you know what I'm saying, I'm seeing that type of brotherhood played out, and I tip my hat to Malcolm, for showing that. For showing that type of brotherhood, because we don't get to see that often. I mean, we're at a point now where just saying you love another man, you got to follow it up with no homo. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. But there was a time where you could actually just be loving brothers, and that's all it needed to be. You didn't have to apologize. You didn't have to worry if somebody considered you whatever. You didn't have to be none of that. It was demonstrated in how you engaged your boys, most particularly at moments of difficulty, moments of tragedy. You got to see brothers come together and handle business. You know what I mean? I had put in work for my boys at different points in time. They put in work for me. And that is the nature of how brothers relate. And I've rarely seen that on screen. Rarely. You know what I mean? So it was good to see that played out. And so they kind of, stick with him through that. And then, of course, Lance gives him permission to write the book, which is something he actually needs to support his family. And at the same time, by the time you get to the end of the film, Robin Sanaa Lathan is ready to have the baby. The baby is breech. This is a film, so this everything goes wrong. There's traffic; they can't get there, and Lance has to deliver the baby because one of his children was breached. And so there's a way he ends up being there for Harper, and you see Harper breaking down. You see Harper because there is no vulnerability like having a child, especially your first. There's no vulnerability like that. And if you've ever lost a child, and I can speak to this too, it can break you. So if you've ever lost a child, especially if you're holding your child in your hands and that child is gone, I've been there. There is no pain like the loss of a child, except maybe the loss of a wife or a husband right up under it, to me. But so you see this moment where Lance is able to be there for him and save his child and his wife's life at the same time. And this is just coming off the end of the funeral. So this reciprocal brotherhood, you know what I mean, is key. Is key. So so we get to the end of the second film, and that's where we are. Is there anything more you want to add before we jump into the new?
The one point when Mia talks to Lance on the phone. This is where love and loyalty and a woman knows her man. She knew him, she believed in him, and she spoke life into him to do what he needed to do. That was something that was very important when you have a woman, when you have that woman that loves you, that knows you. I'm pretty sure when your wife was alive and you had situations, your wife talked to you and she breathed that NGNT was like, you can do this.
Yeah.
No, you got this. And then you like, yeah, I got this. And that's the thing that fire.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that young girls in the Black community are trained on the potency and value of female inspiration or women or feminine inspiration to men?
No. They're not trained to do that.
Yeah.
They're not trained to do that because racism, white supremacy has taught them not to be the inspiration in that way to your man.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you try to inspire him, he's going to do well. He's going to do better. So that also makes competition for them. Because you gotta understand, we're not to be compliments, we're to be competitors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So why would I inspire somebody that I'm in competition for leadership and power?
Get it. Get it.
So in this movie, or I should say in this series, but with Monica Calhoun's character, despite that she's on her deathbed, she knows that her man needs inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And her voice and her belief is the one that pushes. Perfect example. When Adrian gets out of her coma in Rocky 2 and says to Rocky, win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Men understood that.
Yeah. And also in Rocky 3, when she confronts him and she says, what's the problem? And he
Right.
says, I'm afraid. And she
Right.
said, okay, be afraid, admit it. And
Right.
if you don't want this, okay, we'll walk away. But if you keep doing this, it's going to destroy everything around you and the people that you love.
That was
And
hard. That was hard, man. Because I was Mr. T was my man back in the day. I wanted T to win, but I feel you. You're right. She was inspirational. She challenged him to confront what was really bothered him. And if you watch that scene, there are layers of excuses that he has, and she kind of keeps peeling away each layer until she gets to the core. And the core of it was he was afraid. He said, "For the first time in my life, I'm afraid." And she got him to look at it and face it. So you're right. But that inspirational push, the only person that I've heard publicly talk about that was Kevin Samuels. Kevin would routinely say being fit, friendly, beautiful, but inspirational. He would always throw in inspirational. And I think people really underestimated what that meant. Inspirational in the sense that there is a balance, there is a dance between the masculine and feminine. And that when you get that dance right, it can be incredibly powerful. And you've seen that in each of these kind of moments. There's even, and somebody brought this up in the comment section. I apologize. I didn't see who it was, but it was TD Hutch. TD Hutch. He points out the scene where Shelby's daughter, and we're going to talk about that in a second, comes over to Quentin during the funeral and holds his hand while he's crying. And so there's even a kind of even a little girl in that sense, can play a certain type of role, because she sees Quentin, who has actually advocated for her, even though he didn't know her, just because Shelby is kind of a horrible mother. And so she sees him crying on the other side of the, where people are sitting. She goes across the aisle and sits next to him and brings him some tissue, and she sits with him. And it's a beautiful moment that you really don't appreciate until you get to this series we're about to start talking about in a second. But the point is, you still see this connection between the masculine and the feminine that today is commonplace, that we're supposed to dismiss it. We're supposed to act like it doesn't exist. We're supposed to act like anybody and anything can replace any other body and any other thing. There are no more gender roles. There are no more, everything is just up in the air. Mothers can be fathers, fathers can be mother. And I can tell you, as someone who has raised a child by himself, I never could be his mother. I didn't even try. Couldn't be his mother. All I could do was tap into the different qualities of a father to find what I could to fit what he needed. As a boy of mine put it, and he put it brilliantly, he said, I didn't try to mother my children. I couldn't. He said, I just tapped more into the protective aspect of my masculinity to provide what I could. So it came from a protective gesture, but I couldn't be a mother.
You know what? That's kind of funny, though.
Ways of engaging a child that I couldn't do. Well, go ahead.
That's kind of funny. You admit that you could not be the female or the feminine part to your son. But you got a lot of women, and definitely a lot of Black women in our community, say, well, I'm the mother and the father.
Exactly. And you see it every Father's Day. You see it every father, every Mother's Day. You don't hear anybody like myself talking about I'm a mama too. No. The only time that ever came up is when my son was probably in second or third grade. When Mother's Day came around, the teacher let him do, they were doing crafts, in class, and she let him do crafts for me on Mother's Day. And I let it slide. I didn't say anything because he needed that. He was sitting in class and everybody was fawning over their mothers, and he's sitting there, sad, so she let him do that, and it lifted him up. And so as long as it lifted him up, I didn't say, but short of that, nothing I've ever said out loud, and nothing I've even ever thought. But every Father's Day in the Black community, there's a war in terms, and it's usually one-sided. Men don't say anything about this. It's the women that come after the men to say, we don't need you and we replaced you. And it happens annually at this point. It's a one-sided war every Father's Day. And people wonder, again, I there's so many what I call Black masculinist turns. There's so many of them. You can talk about the death of Kevin Samuels and people celebrating it, Black women in particular. We could talk. I mean, there's so many moments we could point to where Black men have, especially in the last 5 years, have really started to observe how much contempt, and you even see it in this series we're going to get to, but how much contempt there is for Black men, and it gives us pause. And that pause over the last few years has begun to turn into a silent walking away, right? And one of those Black masculinist turns, what were we just talking about? Damn it. I was about to say about it. Yeah, man. I start classes tomorrow. I'm just blanking. But, Father's Day. Yeah, that's another one. Every year where we see this attack on Black manhood and Black fatherhood, and especially Black men who are fathering kids that aren't even theirs. And I'm not just talking about stepfathers. I'm talking about boyfriends. I'm talking about coaches. I'm talking about men in the community that have stepped up to play a fathering role as a surrogate father. When you hear these women celebrating their masculinity on Father's Day, there's no sense of just how disrespectful that is to how many men that step up to play that role, often to no fanfare, to no thank you. There's no more thankless a role than being a father to a child that is not yours.
And you're expected to do the roles of a father and above and beyond the call of duty.
Oh yeah. You can meet a woman a few months ago and she fully expects you to pay her kids way all the way through college. There's no more thankless a role than being a stepfather.
I remember I had an ex, and like we were on the verge of breaking up, and she said to me, well, I know we might not work out, but could you still be there for my son?
Oh yes, I've been in that one.
And I remember I talked to one of my buddies, and one of my buddies gave me a look like, what? He's like, I know that bitch didn't say that shit to you. It was just like,
oh yeah.
And I was like, what the hell? I said, and I said, wait a minute. I said, but this chick called me everything but a child of God. But like how you said, you want me to be that ConcuServe for your son.
Right.
And I was like, wow.
So you're going to disrespect me, but you still want me to play this role so it's convenient for you, and you want to guilt me into doing it using my love for your children. I probably would have fell into that myself if I wasn't protecting my son. Meaning, every time I had a relationship and it ended, I always had, I did have women that would say things like, well, I'd still like to be able to call and hang out with your son or whatever. And my thing was, if you could call me everything but a child of God a moment ago, what would make you think I would let you be alone with my child?
Exactly.
It doesn't even make sense to me. If we broke up amicably, I might consider it, but for the most part, I developed a rule that I wouldn't do that, because usually these breakups would get so bad where they're calling you all kinds of out your name, and I'm like, there's no way in the world I would leave you alone with my son. No way in the world I would do that. And I don't do that with your kids. I don't. When we're done, I'm done, and I leave it at that. Shout out to Clutch and Stick, who by the way ain't shit for this statement. Say, you better get that tough look off your face before I come over there and knock it off, Clubber Lang.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my favorite lines. I love when he hit on Adrienne Barbeau.
Hey, woman.
Hey, woman.
Hey, woman. Why don't you come over here with a real man? I'll make you feel good at night.
You know. Anyway, we get off track, but so we he got me on that. I wasn't ready for it.
So we talking about the Best Man, the final chapters. This
final
series.
chapters, yes. And so, so this, of course, picks up not long after the last one. I saw it a while ago. I was hoping more people would come up and we could talk about it as a group, especially people who had seen it. But it's all good. I mean, basically, they try to pick up where things left off. And, as with the last film, they kind of give you a little bit of background to see where people have gone. So we know Harold Perrineau and Regina Hall's characters. The school continues to develop. Their daughters are getting older, growing up, becoming more adults. And they're trying to navigate, their relationship. And she decides that she wants to, eventually go get her PhD. Right. So they're meeting at the beginning of the series. They're going down into the Caribbean, I believe it is, where Quentin, who is now working with his father, for their hotels or whatnot, they're expanding. So we got more of that, middle class, upper middle class aspirationalism. What we got to, every in these series, we always got to see Black ultra wealthy, even though the percentages are so ridiculously low. But anyway. So we get to see them, and he's about to actually get married now, because we know at the end of the second film he calls, and Lance and Harper are they just received Harper's new book. They're sitting there with the newborn baby, and Quentin calls and says, "I'm getting married," and Harper, you better not have had sex with her, right?
And the baby cries.
Right. So they pick up in the beginning of this series, and they're going to the wedding. They're down in the Caribbean. Where he's about to marry. Oh man, what is her name? I should remember her too. I know the guys in the chat do. Somebody tell me her name. Y'all gonna have me go back to the thing. Let's see here. Many of us know her from the Soul Food series. Oh, crap, why is this thing doing this?
Nicole Ari Parker, or
yeah, that's her. Yeah, thank you, Nicole Ari Parker. Let me see if I can. I hate all these pop-ups. All right. So Nicole Ari Parker, and she plays, this kind of wispy, famous chick. She was supposed to be, pretty, I don't know. I guess it's kind of a Black Kardashian kind of thing or whatever. And Quentin has his nose open. So for the first time, Quentin is actually, following behind a woman, and as 72 Pass says, she's referred to as the unicorn, right? So Quentin's nose is open, and he's simping for her. He's always been the one, as you said, that would check everybody else, so now it's a strange thing for them to go down there and actually see Quentin being the one to do all the simping, right? And so he's kind of deep off into this character, and all the friends come down to support. Of course, he doesn't invite Shelby, but in classic fashion, she takes it upon herself
to
crash the wedding, right? And meanwhile, Morris Chestnut's character, Lance, he's going through a crisis, right? He's going through a crisis. He's not necessarily gotten over the death of his wife, but his kids are still growing, and they're still doing their thing. We'll get into that. And if anybody's interested in coming up to talk about it, I will put the link out again, because I don't want to miss anything. And I saw this a while ago. I should have done the show after I watched it, but things were just a little too crazy at the time. But anyway, so he's kind of just having sex with anything that moves. And he's kind of lost, and this is somebody who we've always seen who's relied on his faith, but he's kind of out there, right? And you see him kind of meet a woman out in the Caribbean, and you can tell there's a bit of a connection there, and it doesn't immediately turn to sex. They actually have conversations, which is something that he finds kind of interesting, and so there's a little bit of a connection there. She works at the resort, so to speak, so you have that kind of happening. Harper and Robin, um, are doing well career wise from what it seems. They're kind of all over the place, expanding, things of that nature are going well. Um, and Robin decides that she actually wants to move down to the Caribbean. She's getting more into her culture. You see, she's becoming more of an activist. They kind of play her as the one that kind of delves into the BLM kind of direction of things.
Oh.
Right. So she becomes more of an activist, and that becomes a point of contention in the series as it pertains to their daughter. But she's interested in cooking, so she goes around and she's actually, meeting. She met a woman on the island that cooks and enjoys life out there. So she's contemplating leaving and just kind of doing something new, which is not something that Taye Diggs is interested in doing. He's got another book series that's doing well, but he doesn't want to continue writing books along that line. He's trying to find something different. So, they're kind of pointing out what happens in your 40s and 50s, with family, with Black families. So it's interesting to see that because, again, we don't find too many series where you get to see that follow through. And I'm kind of just jumping over some of this. So you guys in the chat, feel free to bring up anything that I skip over, so we can go there. So let me see what else we have. Robin, played by Nia Long. So she didn't apparently stay with the white dude. She's still perpetually single. She is the, kind of the typical boss chick, what BGS would call 92 octane, still trying to take over the world. And she actually, in this instance, does. She becomes, like the head of NBC. And the stress of it is starting to impact her. To the point where she literally loses her eyesight at one point due to stress, right? And I was actually impressed they went this way, because usually in these kind of series, when they give you a boss chick, they just, they kind of it really becomes this masturbatory kind of display of, Black women achieving and conquering the world. But what you actually see is, the cost of all of this ambition. She's unmarried. She has no children. The stress of the daily life of doing what she's doing is starting to cost her her health. She is still actively godparent to Lance's children, and she actually takes the role seriously, which I was glad to see. But you can see the impact of all of this. And there's a point where Lance's son comes to work for her, and we'll get into that. But, the stress of this is actually hurting her. So her going down to the island, she's trying to break away from work, and she's only partially successful. But, they kind of give you a glimpse into the other side of high ambition for Black women, which, again, you don't see a lot of in these films. So it's kind of what happens on the other side of the fence, where the grass isn't actually greener. Right. So for 3 movies, we've seen her trying to push to the top of this pile. And when she finally gets there, the cost of it is so dramatic. And this comes at the same time that we're seeing actual articles that I posted in social media of Black women who are talking about reaching this high pinnacle of CEO and whatnot. And they're finding themselves unsupported. They're finding the stress levels to be unrealistic. And many of them are quitting and stepping out of those positions. So Robin kind of plays that out for us.
Well, remember, Kevin always talked about this. He says you're playing the role of a man.
Mm.
And what man, like I said, going back, wants to be in competition for a role that he is destined to be?
Right.
And like how you said, now we're dealing with something years later. 20, 30 years ago, she should have been married.
Mm-hmm.
She should have had children.
Mm-hmm.
But her career became her man and her children.
Yeah.
And she realizes that even though that she put all this effort into it, it's all surface level, it's all a facade. But when she comes home, there's nothing there.
Mm-hmm. And for some of them, that doesn't really hit home until menopause. There's something in human nature about when you're finally officially unable to do something that something you always said you didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It that's when things really hit. And that actually does happen to Robin when it becomes, clear that she's not going to be able to have children, right? There's a reality that hits. And as was intimated in the comment section, she does date a couple guys. One of the guys is kind of a spiritual guru she meets down in the Caribbean. Another is an old flame from college. But, for most of us out there, you know how them old flame situations generally go. They don't, you end up really, in a way, I don't want to say you end up breaking up for the same reasons, even though in real life that tends to be the case. But usually it doesn't work. Usually it doesn't work. And so that happens with her as well. Queen Kalila says they find that it's lonely at the top, and then the biological clock gets really loud. Exactly. That's real talk. It gets
That's
really
not a
loud.
biological clock anymore. That's a doomsday clock.
Oh man, it's like one of them Big Ben clocks. But that's real. So let me see. So here we see Robin, right? So their child is getting older. So things have been going well as far as that's concerned. The child, I think, in this series, might be around somewhere between 5 and 7. So it's a few years later. I'm blanking on some of the stuff because I really, like I said, I should have done this right after I saw it. And I really underestimated what it was, because actually I thought it was going to be a movie. I didn't realize it was a series, and I want to say it was like 8 episodes, and they got pretty in depth. So there was a lot of stuff that happened overall. Now, I think one of the biggest things is when you actually see Quentin and Shelby. So Shelby crashes the wedding, and she's in full competition with the fiance.
Oh Lord!
And that gets pretty messy at a particular point because it gets real catty. I mean, it becomes clear she's trying to seduce Quentin away from the fiance. And if I remember correctly, the fiance actually makes a statement to her directly about what exactly she would be tasting if she put her lips on Quentin. But anyway, for YouTube purposes, I can't go into depth there. But, they get pretty catty pretty directly. And she actually does end up having sex with Quentin before the wedding.
Wow.
So it kind of goes there. And, there's a point where Quentin's response to her advances is to leave the unicorn and, chase Shelby down at the airport, because this is the kind of stuff, they want to see, women. This is very reminiscent of Insecure, right? This is what they want to see, right? So he leaves the unicorn and chases Shelby down at the airport, and and gets on one knee and the whole deal. And for me, this was a problem because it was very reflective, in my opinion, of a lot of Black relationships, African American relationships at that. The way they played it, those two could not get along for 5 minutes. Constant arguing, constant bickering, no peaceful moments except maybe a little while during sex. And when you have those kind of relationships, there's a toxicity that we need to actually acknowledge. But in this kind of series, they actually, kind of position the toxicity as what it means to be real, what it means to have a real relationship. Right now, I will say his relationship with his fiance is somewhat superficial. His father, who we finally get to see in this series, who his major arc is that he's starting to experience severe dementia. So Quentin is having to figure out how to step up and run the business while his overbearing father is losing his faculties. And he loves the fiance because they're using her as the face of their hotel businesses. So he's pushing his son to go ahead and marry this woman and so forth because it works well for business. And so by the time Shelby comes out, this toxicity they have is supposed to be reflective of real Black love. This is what we call keeping it real, right? So he leaves the fiance, he breaks up with her to get back with Shelby, which she responds by burning down one of the, I guess, hotel bungalows or whatever. So we have this, waiting to exhale moment. Angela Bassett blowing up the car. She walks away blowing up one of those. And I think, by the way, this is a horrible, horrible image that we keep rehearsing to women and girls as an appropriate way to deal with men who don't act the way you want them to or don't make the decisions you want them to make. We actually tell them that they can be abusive and highly problematic in that this is somehow a good thing.
Uh-huh.
Blowing up houses, blowing up cars, because you're emotionally frustrated or you've been hurt in a relationship. It's only acceptable when women and girls do it on screen, and we keep rehearsing this over and over as if this is a good thing, and it's absolutely ridiculous. But when you see the next generation actually start to act that stuff out, it's ridiculous.
You know what is funny though, Doc?
But
Before we started reviewing the three different separate flicks, you were naming the women that wrote and produced the episodes.
mm-hmm.
This is proof and pudding where you see that they're
Yeah.
putting
Yeah.
their ideologies on this.
Yes.
When here's the problem. When you already have established characters, right? They
Mhm.
did this with T'Challa and his overall image with the Wakanda Forever.
Mhm.
With the latest Candyman, they did this. That you'll take a man who's already established a strong masculine character, but then somehow you'll bitch him up and he'll do something else,
Okay.
which is something like, no, he would not do that.
Mm.
And the women are going to do it. But I remember when BGS was talking about the last few episodes of Insecure,
Mhm.
how the way this is women's way of writing, how the way Lawrence's character, all of a sudden he's going for Issa. And I'm like, hold up, wait a
Right.
minute. No,
Right.
stop.
Right.
He's strong here. He's doing something here. But then
Mhm.
all of a sudden now it's he's this way. But the thing is, this is just an emotional way of women are writing. They're writing from emotion. We're taking something from logic. We're dealing with consistency.
Mhm.
We go from consistency of how the way a character is in a story. If a woman's just saying, well, I just want to do this because I want to see this, and we're saying, well, why?
Mhm.
Well, I think he should do this. No, he's this way, but all of a sudden he's changing. What makes him change?
Right.
Well, he has this change of heart. What makes him have this change of heart? What is it about Shelby
Mhm.
that is making this man change and want to do something that's totally out of his character?
Right.
What is it about her? Is she changing? Is it something about her
No.
that makes him really love her? Is that being displayed? What is it about her? Don't say it's sex, because this is a 50-year-old person.
Well, it's interesting because they play the toxicity after they get back together again, as if not only is everything cool, but everything is great. Right? Their relationship is fairly great after that. And what we've seen in the past two movies is that it's been nothing but contentious. In the first movie, it was a one night stand.
Uh-huh.
In the second movie, they argued all the way through, you know, where he was really on her about being a horrible mother. And, they still had sex, but, and he pondered for a moment about a relationship and then walked away like, hell no. And this one, all of a sudden, it's real love. It's true love. Right. And you just have to, as Ian Van Zant used to say, you just have to stand with her in it
And that's, you
to
see, and
discover
that's
that.
what I hate. That's the BS that you shovel down our throats, and that's why we are walking away.
Yes.
And it says no.
But this
No.
is partially capitalism, because look, all of these series from Insecure to The Best Man, it's all about selling a product to mostly women. It's
Uh-huh.
it's a product that's being sold to mostly women that's good enough for men to want to stay in the room. That's what it is. It's written initially by men, so but these men are still very much happy wife, happy life. But there are these moments that are catered to men that make you want to enjoy it. So it's actually something that both people will stay in the room for. But for the most part, especially when you see them bringing in writers from Insecure, we see where they're tailoring this to. And
Uh-huh.
the underlying idea is that Black toxicity, relationship based toxicity, is somehow a social good. It's somehow something that benefits us because it's real. It's Black love. It is the velvet painting that I talked about. I did a show, over a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where I talked about walking away from the velvet painting, right? Trying to live up to an idea and not actually dealing with the person standing in front of you. And this is a perfect example of what I mean by that, because as dysfunctional as this relationship is between Quentin and Shelby, that's precisely why you need to walk away from it. But the film doubles down and tells us that this is real love.
But you know what that velvet painting of that toxicity really is?
Hmm.
The portrait of Dorian Gray.
Oh my God. Oh my. Yeah.
And I got to be real about it.
Yeah.
It looks nice from a distance, but as we get closer and we get closer to it,
Yeah.
it's rapidly aging and destroying us and destroying our generation.
But this is how they triple down on it to tell you that this is somehow fated, right? This is destined to be. What you find is that the daughter in the second one that Shelby has is a product of the one night stand from the end of the first movie.
Okay.
That this has been Quentin's baby the entire time.
Now, I don't mind that.
Well, but wait a minute. She's never told him. He doesn't find out until this series that the child is his.
And how is this child? Like 14, 15 years old?
She's a teenager. By the time we get to this series, she's a teenager.
And coincidentally, that's the child that comes up to him and puts her hand on him and comforts him at the funeral.
Yes. That's why that moment becomes that much more poignant in the third series, when you realize that's been his daughter. Now, this is the same man that talked about losing his mother. This is the same man whose father is dealing with dementia. This is the same man who was about to get married, right? And passes on that. And now he's with this woman who has basically lied to him for the entirety of his child's life up to that point about him being the father. Right.
But then you know what cracks me up with that? You'll have women say, well, that's even more proof why he should get with her. No.
Exactly. And that's what I mean.
I said, first of all, let's get something straight, like how you said. We're talking about for 15 years. He doesn't even know that this child is his, and she doesn't say anything.
Right.
She is a strag among strags.
Right. Right.
But the thing is, like how you said, there's no accountability there for her.
Right.
But then people say, well, I said, no. Let's not go, well, no. Where's her accountability for that? And the person that really gets hurt is the child. Because for all these years, she doesn't know who her father is. But then we're going to turn it on in and make it, oh, it's cliche that, well, that's the child and that's good. That cliche red herring bullshit is corny, because now you have men like me and you are like, what? No, she's a piece of shit for doing that. But the thing is, like, we tell women, so when y'all write this feminist dribble, we're supposed to say, oh, it's cool, and we're supposed to wrap it all with a bow and think, no. I'm like, no.
What men are getting are these moments. That's what we get. We get moments, right? Like we talked about the poker game, or one of the brothers going through something and the other brother showing up. You get those moments, and that's enough to keep you in the room, while at the same time dealing with so much of this gynocentric dysfunction. That's the trade-off. But most series, especially when they're catering to women, they don't even give you moments. They are unapologetic about catering to women. If you ever watch one of these, because there's been, I've called it a kind of Black film renaissance happening on channels like BET. You see a lot of these low budget films that you'll never see anywhere else, and they're Black casted. I mean, they're all over BET, and in one vein, it's a good thing to see all of that. But then when you actually sit and watch them, Black men are they're objectified sexually, they're objectified aesthetically, they're just the backdrop the story to take place. 72 Pass says you can watch Tubi, I guess, and see some of those as well. But
Bounce TV.
they don't cater. They don't really cater to black men. You're just a part of the story, but the story is really about her. And so we see a lot of that happening with some of these characters and some of these stories. Many of these stories, they're not about us. We just happen to be along for the ride. You know, we're the backdrop where she tells her story, especially when it comes to, and you see this a lot with Tyler Perry films, like when they want to show that she's really arrived. She's got to have this model-esque millionaire, you know, a guy, or this really, you know, pure-hearted blue-collar guy that rescues her from her pain, but he doesn't really get to rescue her. She rescues herself, but he becomes the arm candy to kind of justify her arrival at reaching her fullest potential. So these kinds of narratives have become very regular. And so I will say that when it comes to the Best Man series, you at least get moments of genuine storytelling around men's experiences. And some of them get pretty nuanced. I mean, Harold Perrineau's story arc in this series. So one of the things I left out early on in the beginning of this new final chapter series is that instead of pushing Harper to do a book, now they want to turn his original book from the first movie into a movie. Right? They want to make it a movie, which means that he has to tell Lance about it. And he, you know, and he has to go through that whole kind of thing again with Lance, where, you know, because in many ways, this is putting, you know, the pain of the first movie on display on a whole nother level. You know, it goes from being on a book to being on in a film. But one of the things they end up doing is with Murch's character, which is ironic because they really do play him like he actually was in the first movie. But this is something that frustrates Murch. They play him to be very emotional, very, you know, manipulatable. You know, they play him weak, and he's so offended. He doesn't show up to the film. He doesn't talk to the guys for a good portion of the series. He is so offended about his portrayal and his own sense of masculinity that he actually starts training in MMA and throughout the course of the series to really kind of find his masculine center. Which, you know, I'm not mad at, but I'm saying this is you know, this is part of the story, right? Where he's not happy about how he's seen, and you know, especially during this period when he's in undergrad, you know, following after Shelby, right? So that's part of his story arc, being a father of two daughters, you know, and trying to, you know, balance that. He's grappling with racism. He comes across an entitled, privileged white girl who, you know, just in terms of getting in a cab, decides to, you know, they're arguing over a cab. He's trying to get in it. She takes the cab, and when he confronts her about it, you know, she threatens to, you know, she suggests to the police that he was a threat to her. Right. So he's grappling with not only his masculinity, but now he's also dealing with entitled racism from this white woman. And, you know, so there's a lot of tension there, and he's trying to kind of find his bearings. So that ends up being his story arc. And he actually goes into MMA fighting, and he finds that he actually has a talent for it. Right. And so he goes through the process of training and even enters a tournament where some of his kids find him on video having these regular fights that he's not telling anybody he's doing. And eventually they all figure out that he's doing it, and they show up at this title fight. But he's basically doing underground, you know, cage fighting. And, you know, so that's one story arc, you know, as far as he's concerned. His wife's character, played by Regina Hall, when she's down in the Caribbean and they're experimenting with, I think it was peyote, she gets really high. She gets really off into health and herbal medicine. And, you know, and so she decides she wants to go to school. She wants to work on a doctorate in regard to this. And, you know, the first mentor professor she works with doesn't really see her vision. And it's a woman. So she ends up approaching this elder Black man who's highly respected professor and scholar. Now, you tell me, just with what I've given you there, what do you think happens?
Has an affair with the guy.
Nope, not an affair. She is loyal to her husband. So instead of an affair, he tries to violate her against her wishes, against her will.
So now we're going to show.
Yes.
Oh God. So now we're going to put the rape
Yes.
or the alleged
The attempted.
rapist stereotype in.
Mm-hmm. So this black
So
male professor, who is her really her sanctuary in a way, because the prior professor did not see her vision, right? And so she was trying to figure out what she could possibly do. So she goes into his class. He's brilliant, well spoken, intelligent. He's an elder statesman, so to speak. He's older and whatnot. He carries himself so well throughout most of the series until the moment where he decides to, as KJ Eternal says, tries to run to the Bill Cosby approach. And he tries to violate her. And it's only lucky that one of his staff people happens to walk in right when it's starting to get testy, because she's kind of caught off guard for a moment. And then she tries to resist. It starts to get weird. And that's when his staff person walks in. And from there, she's grappling with that. She's dealing with the trauma of that. And of course, doesn't tell her husband until much later. Right. And you also got to wonder if with all this new MMA training, what might happen. But so her story arc, is trying to transition from just being the school marm that works under her husband in his project to finding herself and getting her PhD, but then having to deal with the black male, rapist. Right. That's the story arc there. So when I say that this is feminist leaning,
yeah, I'm like,
they
okay.
delve into problematic tropes, they do.
But you know what gets me, man? Here again, remember we talked about this on Artisan's channel,
Okay.
and we definitely talked about this this term, the hero's journey, with BGS.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is the problem with women. Women will not talk about the hero's journey because they don't understand trial and tribulation. That first woman that didn't see her vision, they're not going to write and see that she's going to probably go to different people and try to help her. We're going to automatically put something in that's going to show opposition, that a guy is going to try to violate her or rape her to add more tension to that. I'm like, really? We're going there?
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't make her that she's trying and she's pushing to go get somewhere. She's going to try harder. She's dealing with problems and opposition. And she comes to Merch and she says, why is this not working for me? Why can't this just go here? And he probably has to calm her down and says, we're going to work this out.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to push that. We got to push that. And also we have to make the image of the black man into the more creepy one, Really?
Yeah. And it's all kinds of creepy. Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, really? We're gonna go for that one. We just can't win for losing.
Right.
It just can't be like, okay, we have one guy who was masculine in the first two movies, but then he becomes a simp in the next one, and he's also a baby daddy.
Right.
We'll make a guy who was a simp in the first movie
Mm-hmm.
emotional, and he sees it throughout the series, but he decides to start building his confidence by being competitive and by just doing something that he wants to do that he knows that's going to strengthen him up and build confidence and masculinity.
Right.
And instead of taking his frustrations out in a negative way, he does it in a positive way. But on the flip side, his wife wants to move ahead, but we're going to show, even though that her husband is gaining masculinity, we're going to drop and make a black man's image look even worse by showing that a black man's a rapist.
Oh, we got more for you.
Oh,
we got more for you. So, so now I did skip over one of the minor story arcs with Harold Perry News Merch is that he's jealous that Quentin has asked Harper to be his best man as opposed to him. Because remember I said earlier,
yeah,
Quentin and Merch were a little closer, Harper and Lance were closer. So it was a little bit of a breach for Quentin to ask Harper to be his best man. And so it hurts Merch a little bit. And this, this kind of leads up to, by the time you get to this film portrayal, he really feels disrespected and effeminate and emasculated. So we move to Lance. Now, this is probably one of the major pieces to this whole series. So Lance is trying to find himself. He's trying to figure out what to do. He's sleeping with everything moving. He's depressed. He's trying to figure it out. He does meet this woman in the Caribbean, but they just kind of stay in contact. It's not one of these kind of whirlwind loves or anything that just takes off, right? So they come back to the States. They're dealing with their situation, and they do kind of let he's still being a father. He hasn't checked out of everything. He's still being a father. He's just a little depressed and kind of lost as far as dealing with relationship and where he stands in his life as far as that. He's also retired, and there is a period where he actively decides to go back to the NFL at in his mid 40s, which is interesting to say the least. And luckily doesn't last long. But he kind of give you a sense that he's starting to find his way, and they kind of allude to him training some of the new generation athletes, becoming a coach as opposed to a player again. But he decides to go back into playing for the NFL because he can't really find anything that inspires him, that moves him. And football was the only thing that did. But the biggest issue in Lance's life at this point has to do with his kid. So he has, I think he had at least 2 sons and a daughter. They only show one of the sons maybe once. You do kind of get to see the daughter, but the biggest issue is his eldest son. I don't know if they're going to show him in this gallery of pictures, but I'll just kind of look. But his eldest son, who does go to work for Nia Long's character for a little bit at NBC or whatever. Okay, 72 Pass said they had 4 kids. You don't really see the other ones much, except for one of the daughters, but the major one you see is his eldest son, who is queer.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew you were making that build up.
Yep, he's queer, and he's in the closet, right? He's in the closet. So he's trying to play football because his father loves football, and he's fairly good at it. He's not passionate about it, which is really his only failing as an athlete. He's got the skills, he's got the gifts, but he doesn't really want to do it.
He doesn't have the passion.
He wants to wear high heels. He wants to be non-binary. He wants to dress and wear makeup. And this becomes something he starts to explore a little bit, working for Nia Long's character. Yeah, 72 Pass said it. He said, he was like, I was like, here we go. Right. So that's kind of one of the things you kind of see happening there, where there's a tension there, right? About, when is somebody going to tell Lance that, now Lance is of course, the most, masculine character there. He's an NFL player. He's physically strong and domineering if he wants to be. He's handsome, he's intelligent, and he's pretty much the alpha in any relationship he has. And of course, it's going to be him that's grappling, that has a son who's grappling with his own sexuality and is hiding it from his father. And so it ends up getting to the point where everybody kind of ends up finding out about it except for Lance.
Kind of like the book situation in the first movie.
Exactly. And of course, the way it kind of comes out, his son kind of reveals it on social media, and Lance kind of walks in and sees it. So nobody actually sits down with Lance and says, hey, look, especially his son, right? And you see a clip there of merch training. But nobody, pays Lance the basic respect of sitting him down and telling him, which you can see as a reoccurring issue here, right? And they play it strictly as Lance being hyper masculine, homophobic, and nobody delves into the basic disrespect of not talking to him. Like that to me would have been more interesting story arc for me. But what they do is they double down into his hyper masculinity and his inability to accept that his son is non-binary queer, and the pronouns are in deep use. I mean, it's on.
What's funny though, man?
Go ahead.
I realize now when you have a lot of these shows, but especially with our people in them, there's going to be certain tropes for men.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, you're going to have the effeminization, whether he's gay, non-binary, queer, or just an effeminate man.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be there. You're going to have the creepy man,
Hmm.
black man. Then you're going to have the black man that's the alpha, but he's toxic masculine alpha that he cannot deal with certain things,
Hmm.
you know. And then you have the accommodating black man.
Hmm.
You know, everybody likes him. He's this, he's that, but he's so nice, he's likable, but he cannot get a woman. Kind of like, I'll tell you what, he's the Jim Rhodes and the Sam Wilson.
Okay.
They can do anything and everything, they're cool, but they're asexual.
There is okay. Right.
You'll see that a lot a lot of black movies. Like, okay, wow, he's this, he's that, but he's asexual. He doesn't really have a woman. He's around women.
Hmm.
He doesn't give any vibes of being gay. You
Hmm.
know, he can go in and save the day, but somehow, now if it's a love interest, it may be with a woman of another race.
Well, I know what you're talking about, and the first thing that came to mind when you described it was the last Jurassic Park movie,
Yeah,
where they had a black man and a black woman in it. The black woman was queer, and you find out toward the end that she's got her eye on the main woman of the film, the redhead,
Ron Howard's daughter.
Ron Howard's daughter. She's kind of got her eye on her the whole movie. Meanwhile, the black male in the movie is he's asexual in his presentation.
Mhm.
There's no love interest. He actually meets the black woman. They have no connection whatsoever. They just meet and that's it. There's no nothing, and you can't really tell if he's straight, if he's gay, if he's non-binary. They don't necessarily say it, but in his behavior, he's pretty much asexual and non-binary in his presentation. So you do kind of see that we're either played for hyper masculine and homophobic, and then or at the other end of the spectrum we're asexual and void of and then if you go further into that spectrum, of course, you get black men used as the face in popular culture of being non-binary, queer, gay, trans, so on and so forth. So you get these kind of displays where black masculinity is used as a paintbrush for white angst about sexuality, and
Exactly.
they get to use us however they want. Real quick, the images you guys are seeing on the screen. So this is the unicorn on the left, in terms of Quentin's love interest at the beginning, his fiance. The gentleman in the middle is the old college flame for Nia Long's character. I think we saw him in Power for a while. I think Ghost might have took care of his character. And then, of course, this is the gentleman who plays Quentin's father, who's grappling with dementia, overbearing, but saying at the same time, the black man that built his business from nothing and built this multi-million-dollar business. So, those are some of the characters for that. So that's Nicole Ari Parker, as you guys play her. She plays Jamari Amani. I don't know how to pronounce that properly, but I should have pulled this up earlier. Ron Canada as Wellington. I like him as an actor. I've
Hmm.
seen him in a number of things. He's good.
Veteran actor.
Veteran, yes. Brandon Victor Dixon. Okay, I didn't know his name. He's pretty talented. I'm gonna see what he does over time. So this is Ivana Pearson. She plays Jasmine. This is the Caribbean love interest for Lance. Yeah, there are no sex scenes or anything like that. She's just considered to be an upstanding lady. But the way they play her is she's the only one that doesn't take Lance's shit. So in other words, when Lance runs into other women, he can pretty much bed them. I mean, he runs into one woman that he ends up having sex with in the car within a matter of an hour or so, right? Whereas when he runs into her, she's checking him. She doesn't take his stuff. Now, luckily, they don't push that trope too far where you get a whole film of her mommying him. That's usually what happens, but they didn't do that this time. She did it for a little bit, and then from there they just allowed them to work out together. Apparently, though, they do intimate that she's engaged to a woman when she meets him, and then later in the series she becomes available, and they kind of get together by the end. But so she plays Jasmine. Beautiful, beautiful woman though. And then so you have Terrence Terrell as Will. This is one of the love interests. He's the spiritual guru that Nia falls for on the island toward the beginning. You see some fresh faces, and this is Eric Scott Ways as LJ. So LJ is Lance's son, right? He's this is the one who's non-binary, right? And they kind of play all of their kids almost like cousins, which is kind of realistic. You got a group of friends since college. They all have kids that are around the same age for the most part. They end up kind of acting more like cousins than anything. So I think it's Shelby's daughter, if I remember correctly, that was fairly close with him, you know, but there's nothing going on between them. I mean, if anything, she kind of supports him. So he wears makeup, he wears high heels, he wears, you know, the dresses, and he hides them from his father. So by the time his father sees this on social media, so that's how he decided to come out. He decided that he was tired of hiding, and he jumped on social media, and he was walking around in high heels and a dress, and his father walks in as the group is watching social media on television, and he sees it for the first time. And of course, he's frustrated. His approach to it is he wants his son to just stop acting, you know, just turn it off, just, you know. So they kind of play Lance as this troglodyte, you know, caveman who, you know, who, homophobe, whatever. Where I thought a more, you know, a creative approach would have been to just deal with a frustrated father who nobody has told. Because again, everybody knows about it except for him, you know. So anyway, that said, you know, that becomes a story arc. And when it's clear that his father won't accept him the way he is, he runs away. And there's a period where you don't know if he's committed suicide, because that's one of the things that, you know, we know to be the case statistically. When you're dealing with, you know, especially young Black trans, right? Suicide rates can be, you know, fairly high in terms of that. So they kind of, you know, really point that out in the series. While he's disappeared for a couple episodes, we don't actually know if he's hurt himself. And so you actually find that he has a queer friend that he goes to and stays with for a minute. And then he goes to a church and stays with a particular priest that I think is, you know, has a kind of shelter, non-binaries who don't have anywhere to go, you know, because the homeless rates tend to be pretty high for, you know, trans, non-binary young folks of color too. So they kind of give you glimpses into each of those. And it's through the potential loss of his son's life that he comes to grips with the fact that it doesn't matter. He just loves his son for who, you know, for him just being his son. So he kind of goes through that kind of arc unto itself. And you guys in the comments, you know, let me know if there's anything I'm missing, because I'm sure I am. But they play that trope out. So the most hyper masculine guy in the group has to learn to love his son beyond his son's sexuality and kind of go from there. And so from there, you kind of see him. He'll show up at a public event with his father, and he might wear a blouse underneath his suit jacket. It's not as pronounced as high heel and dress, but it's his way of being able to express himself and have his father somewhat accept it, you know, in a public way. So you have that kind of story arc happening with Lance and kind of going through that. And this is not wholly unreal. I mean, I do have a good brother of mine I've known for over 30 years that is grappling with his son being gay. So it's not that this doesn't happen, but I can tell you, as much as my friend has struggled with it, what he's presented to his son is support. He's presented to his son, I'm still your father and I'm not going anywhere. You know what I mean? And I think that image of Black men is not seen. I mean, I think this is low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
Go for the father who damn near wants to put hands on his son behind this, as opposed to the father that actually will sit down and talk to his son.
And
conversations.
That's what pisses me off.
Right.
It pisses me off. And here's my thing. I don't mind having a character that's dealing with modern day themes, right? Because it's real. Because it could happen to almost anybody within our family. Because we all have people in our family that are in the alphabet community. The thing is, I can understand that you have a guy who's this alpha masculine guy, and he has a son that's quote unquote queer. I agree. I would rather seen him do it in a more mature fashion, showing how he can do that.
Right.
Instead of keep giving these negative tropes upon us. And making us seem like we're not mature enough to handle things. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be doing backflips and cartwheels and having a ticket taker parade for his son.
Right.
But I mean, this is something where he has to try to. It's something that he has to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. I'd rather if they showed it in a mature fashion.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
well, and the other side to that too is, the comfortable trait again is that, or stereotype is that women just love it and they're fine with it, and men are just cavemen that can't handle it. Especially in the Black community, as comfortable as we are with those stereotypes, that's not how that goes. There are mothers, grandmothers, aunties, cousins, sisters who are not comfortable with this. You know what I mean? When I talk about my boy, his daughter and his wife have a serious problem with, the son, and being gay. This it's not, but but the portrayal of this is something that men can't handle and women are just mature enough to grasp. That's not how this goes. People are
mhm,
complex, people are nuanced. You got the person you thought can handle it that can't stand it. The person you didn't think could handle it at all is, it might be your biggest supporter, but they go for the low hanging fruit of just making men immature and incapable, while women are these fairy goddesses that are loving. And it's ridiculous. There are women that have severe issues with this. When you talk about homophobia, uh, you know it, Black women and homophobia, that is a real connection that does exist, despite how much it's not played in
mhm,
popular culture. And there are fathers, as you're pointing out, that have maturely handled this. Now, I can say that doesn't necessarily mean that, as you said, that they're doing backflips to celebrate this, because there is something. Do you have kids?
no, I don't.
Okay. So there's something about looking at a woman that's pregnant with your child, and you start to fantasize about this child before they even breathe their first breath. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
So now, in all ways, a child is going to go a different direction than you plan. But there are moments, or there are situations where something that is a bedrock part of your sense of reality, every now and again, you'll have a child completely go against that. That's not like you're a football player, you want your son to be one, but he doesn't want to be one. That can rock some people. But something deeper, something that you hold on deeply to, that your child just doesn't have the same relationship to, that happens. and it,
mhm,
and, and it can really be jarring. So I'm not suggesting that just because it's difficult for a man or a woman to accept, that somehow makes them monsters. You develop these ideas when your child is still in the womb. I mean,
mhm,
fathers, you almost can't help it. They're just, things you start to fantasize about. And it can be challenging. Now, some things, when your child goes another way, some things you're like, okay, I get it. Some things are going to hit at the core of who you are. And I'll be honest with you, you don't know what those things are until the shit happens.
mhm.
I'm gonna tell you that right now. The things you think you can handle, the things you ain't even thinking of, if it rocks your world, sometimes it comes out of the blue, and you just don't see it happen. And it may be things that other folks don't even think you should be bothered with. You know what I mean? But the reality is, I would have liked to see them deal with this with more nuance than just, making Black men these barbarians. And so he
You know
kind of
what's
has to go
funny?
with that. Go ahead.
I wanted to mention something. 20 some odd years ago, when the first Best Men came out, and when Love Jones came out, and a few other movies, it was showing Black men having depth. We had more nuances within our personalities, who we are. We
Mhm.
weren't just known for just blatant physical masculinity. We could run down a football field or put a basketball through a hoop, or we could rap and we could dance, or we played the pivotal gangster,
Mhm.
or the magical Negro. It was like,
Mhm.
oh, you're a person. These are people. Yeah, but when you come along now and you're having this, okay, we see that you're professional, but you still, now you're putting us back into this box.
Mhm.
You know, you could be the normal Black man that you look physically, masculine, but at the same time, there's no, you, you're not really going after the woman, or no woman's going after you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Or if we're showing the emotion, or we want to show the depth, it has to be you're some reformed black man from prison, or you're dying, or you're either a part of the alphabet community. And it's like, and men like you and me and other brothers in the chat and around, like, wait a minute, I'm a normal heterosexual black man. I got depth. And there are a lot of men that have depth, but we're like, that's it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, for real, like that's how we're seen.
Yeah.
We're back to, for a little bit 20 years ago, we were showing 3 dimensions of us, but now we're back to that 2 dimension.
Exactly. And this is particularly frustrating for a series that has been known for nuance. It's, again, even like if you just take Quentin is not supposed to be wise. Quentin is not supposed to be something helping others. He's supposed to be comedic relief. He's the joke. He's the trickster. That's all. But this series turned him into a 3-dimensional character that has depth when characters like him rarely do, right? And beyond Quentin, we've seen other characters grow, right? We've seen Harper grow. Even in the first movie, we see him making mistakes. We see him being challenged to speak from the heart. We see him grappling with religion as an atheist. I mean, we see these characters grow in different directions. And I'm not saying that one type of growth is the best or what. It's not about that. Each character grows in their own way. So for a series to have that kind of nuance, there are moments where these 2-dimensional portrayals, kind of are, a bit, traitorous to, some of the ethics of the series, some of the what they've laid out. But let me see. There's only so much I can cover. I'm going to cover 2 other elements, 2 other story arcs that I think are important to this. I think the one with Lance and his son LJ is one of the biggest ones, of course. From there, let's go to Robin. Let's do that. We're going to go to Robin. So Robin and Harper. So Robin and Harper are at a point where
my future wife.
well, she's decided that she wants to live in Africa. She's decided she has a crush on a guy. They show that for a little bit. She hangs out with the guy.
Even though she's married. Oh my God.
Even though that she's married, and Harper disappears for a while. I think he's selling his book. He's overseas doing his work. They don't show him for a couple episodes, but they don't suggest that he's cheating. They do have a moment, however, where he does hang out with Nia Long's character. This is probably the closest since the first movie where the potential for something to happen goes down. This is after the movie, when they finally get to premiere the movie that's based on his book. And it ends up where just he and Nia Long are alone at the end of the evening together. But they say that nothing actually happened. So you can kind of make your own judgments from there. But they get to a point where the mother Robin takes the daughter to a protest. And this becomes a frustrating thing because the protest gets pretty serious and people get locked up, including Robin. She gets arrested. And so Harper's frustration at this point is that Robin is not properly taking into account how dangerous the things she wants to do are for their daughter. Right?
Exactly, I agree.
So her sense is that he's an Uncle Tom. He's a conservative. He wants to go along to get along. He wants to move into this suburban house that he really wants. They move into it, but she really doesn't want to be there. She wants to stay close to the people on the grassroots level. And so that's a tension that they play with, but she goes with him to move there because it's something he really wants. But then as she delves into her activism, and they really kind of show you clips of her being active in BLM-like groups, she's taking her child to these places, and some of these things get contentious, and that becomes a point of tension between the two of them. It reaches a head when they decide, and I'm skipping over a lot. So in the comments, if there's anything you guys want to interject, feel free to. But they get to a point where, she wants a divorce. And on top of the divorce, she wants to take the child to Africa. She wants to move to Ghana. And they have this huge argument where Harper calls her a fake African Kunta Kinte. She calls him an Uncle Tom. And I mean, they're going for the jugular, right? And this is where, that whole kind of argument kind of goes to there, this whole question of a divorce. Now, I did find a little bit of a clip that I can play. Let's see here. Hold on. We got L Rain coming in. L Rain, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys.
Is it L Rain? Is that what you prefer?
Yeah, it's El Rain.
Oh, I hear babies in the back. Oh,
sorry, that is my daughter.
No, I understand. I'm a parent. I'm about to show this little clip, and then I want you to chime in and tell us. Did you see the series?
I did.
Okay, so you know what this is. But,
oh yes.
But this is a short on YouTube. I couldn't really listen to it because I found it while the show has been going, so I don't know where they clipped it from. And I'm always having sound problems on this, so I hope you guys are going to be able to hear it. But there's a moment where, and Elle knows about this, right? There's a moment where they've had this big argument in front of their friends, where Harper and Robin have had this argument. Robin leaves, and the idea is that she wants to take their daughter to Africa with her in the divorce. And so Harper is standing here clearly stressed and frustrated, and Shelby comes over to him to basically say that a mother is the best person to have the child, and she always has the child as her primary concern. And she intimates that this is why the children need to stay with the mother upon a divorce.
Uh-huh.
So let's see if I can get this to play, and you guys can hopefully hear it. Let me know if you guys can hear it.
No, we can't hear it, brother.
You guys can't hear that at all?
No.
This is what I mean. Let me see. Okay, let's try it another way. Let's see. This way worked last time. So bear with me for a second. In the meantime, while I set this up, Elle, give us your thoughts. You're coming in now. You've heard the discussion. What are your thoughts about the series and the discussion so far?
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me on, and utmost respect for you, Dr. T, and your channel. I listen quite often. My husband and I listen, and it's just great.
Oh, thank you.
I had a talk with a college friend of mine who is a man and a Black man. He works with an organization where he helps young Black men into college and things like that. And it was interesting because he thought the one person that he was really upset with was Harper, because he felt like Harper wasn't being the man that he needed to be in his marriage and for his family. And I just thought, wow, we just missed all of what Robin did in that situation. And I think that it was interesting that the writer or director still played on the fact that even in the first movie, Robin wasn't someone who was really settled in a career. She really was a free bird, and she wanted to do the things that she wanted to do. And she still wanted to do that in her marriage. Yeah. And I just thought that was completely unfair.
Yeah. That's an interesting point where in one sense we see growth with characters, and then in another we see them grappling with things that they were dealing with in the first movie. That's a good point. In a way, her focus was, really about her. And we see that. Now I'm going to try this again. Hopefully this will play for you guys. So as I set up the scene, remember, Robin has just walked out after an intense argument. She plans to take their daughter to Africa. Harper is standing with Shelby, and Shelby is explaining to him that, letting the mother have the child is the best thing, because the mother always has the best intentions of the child at heart. So hopefully you guys can hear this one. Mother, we always have the best interest of our children. Always. Okay, so did you guys hear that at all? Okay.
Yes.
I'll back it up for a second. And, the sound comes in choppy, and that's the clip itself. But here we go. Mother, we always have the best interest of our children. Always. So then you lying to Kennedy and keeping her away from Quentin for 10 years, was that in her best interest? No, for 10 years. Wow. Really? Was that in her best interest? Okay. So I apologize. I disrespectfully disagree. That's some real talk. What the fuck did you just say? I said
Keep my wife's name out your motherfucking mouth, nigga.
Do you think this is a joke?
Okay. Now tell me, I hope you guys can hear that all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So any thoughts about that? And I'm coming to Malik on this one because I know you hadn't seen the series, but after I set up the scene, you saw what you saw. What are your thoughts about that?
No accountability.
Okay.
A whole contradiction. It's about what she wants basing on emotion. How dare she say the mother knows what's best for the child? And I was thinking the same thing, but Tay Diggs said, keeping a secret for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's showing how the way the modern woman thinks. It's not about what's best for the child. It's what I want and what I want now.
Well, and I think, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And if you're thinking what's best for the child needs a parental coalition of two parents.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure she's still going to want Hart to pay child support all the way in Africa.
You know what? L might be able to help me with this. I don't remember them talking about child support. L, do you remember that?
No, it was more along the lines of splitting their assets in the custody of their daughter.
Right. I think that was the only. Well, and L, chime in on this before I say anything. What were your thoughts about that scene?
I thought that I was glad that they gave Harper that moment to remind Shelby of who she really is.
Mm-hmm.
Who she has been for the past 10 so years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it was definitely a moment for, I feel like, a lot of women to take in. Mm-hmm. No one is going to excuse you of a mistake that you made. Mm-hmm. This isn't a redemptive moment for you just because you see a friend of yours who is being challenged in the custody of their child. And it was just interesting to really see how they played on really what is fair when it comes to the custody between both parents.
Yeah.
And I definitely appreciated how it showed Harper really fighting for her. Mm-hmm. I'm disappointed how it turned out in the end, but I really thought that they could have held on to that part of him, in a much stronger way. But obviously they wouldn't go that direction because it would be bad to allow the man to assume this masculine trope over his ex-wife,
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, what we end up seeing is, he spends some time with his daughter and he sees her give up her lunch for a homeless person. And in that moment, he begins to reflect on how positive an influence Robin has been, so much so that he allows Robin to take the daughter uncontested. Right. So here again, you have this moment where you bend the knee to the inherent goodness of women as backed by this, family court system. Right. So this idea is that as opposed to fighting the system, which would kind of make him a villain, him acquiescing to Robin's inherent wisdom is the kind of prescribed method that we're given for what men are supposed to do if they are to be good men, good black men at that. So he Robin leaves with the child, they go to Ghana, and then, at the end, as he's winning, was it I think it was a Pulitzer, right?
It was a Pulitzer. Mm-hmm.
He's winning this major Pulitzer award. She gifts him with the daughter being able to come. Now it's a little weird. The daughter doesn't make the ceremony.
What?
He's walking out of the building, and the daughter kind of shows up afterwards. I was like, what's the point? If you're gonna let her be there, at least let her make the damn ceremony. But and I guess the subtext to that is if you acquiesce, if you bend the knee, If you nod to her inherent wisdom, she will gift you with, some type of cooperative negotiation and let you have this moment with your daughter. And that's kind of where that ends. Now there
So
is
if you bend the knee to the gynocracy, we will give you breadcrumbs for your minor happiness.
pretty much.
All
And
right, can we go back? All right. So here's how the way they do this with imagery. They're going to show this image of his daughter giving an act of kindness. So somehow he gets an epiphany. Oh, I should let her go. Cut the bullshit.
yeah, because they just
Stop.
they
I'm
just
sorry. I'm sorry,
played
Doc.
him up. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Cut that. And this is where a lot of people were like, oh, stop. Stop. That's putting seeds of BS in your mind. No. Okay, my daughter gave a homeless man some food, but that still doesn't separate the part that this woman's taking my child away from me.
Or now, and it just as well could have been the case that at this protest where Robin gets arrested, that the daughter could have got hurt,
Exactly.
right? And that would have suggested that Robin was the villain, right? And if he fought for his child, it could have been presented as him being the hero. They made decisive kind of, they made clear decisions about how to play this out in a very particular way. And the prescription for men at the end of the day goes back to the underlying theme I think you find in all three films: happy wife, happy life, right? At some point you concede, you allow her, she guides, you follow, and that's the acceptable way of engaging this. But if you press too hard, that you're the problem. And even in that moment we just saw with Quentin and Shelby, right? Now that's not the Quentin I've seen in the last two movies.
Exactly.
Quentin does not let people talk to him like that. But now he's married to Shelby. The daughter that he thought was just her daughter is his. So he's in a kind of a ready-made family, even though he's the biological father. And when she talks, now she does show you, they do give us a chance to see Shelby a little more humanely. She's actually very supportive when they find out that his father is grappling severely with dementia. Like they go into his home and you can actually see the impact of dementia in terms of how somebody who's living alone, how that impacts them. And that can be a very jarring thing. So you actually see her. She actually has a good relationship with his father. And she's actually very supportive and inspirational for Quentin in terms of dealing with that. But even just the way she spoke to him right now, right? We're putting this message out in media that this is appropriate, because all he did was he actually agreed with someone who pointed out how something was unfair to him. And for her to cuss him out that way, that being an acceptable form of talking to him and him acquiescing to it, right? That all of that to me was highly problematic, but his way is to joke it off, defer, kowtow to her. But he at no point really checks her for her having kept his daughter from him and all this time. He never really does. What you just saw was the only time somebody spoke up on Quentin's behalf as far as his daughter. Nobody does in the entire series.
This is where we go again with revisionist history, where the character Quentin from the past two movies would have said something.
Exactly.
But now we're going to make him pussy whip and nobody else says nothing. We're going to make him this spineless person.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to turn him into Will Smith now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's essentially what they did. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Quentin's character, he was such a powerful character in the first movie itself. I mean, he was the voice of reason for all of them.
Yeah.
And I just thought that it was so sad that they, stopped his evolution into the man that he could have become. And just pointing out Robin's character just for a moment, other than all of the other dysfunction amongst the other female characters, I thought that she was other than Shelby, I thought that Robin was the most disappointing, because she was really the most she had the most instability in the way that she thought about how she wanted to progress her family.
Mm.
And like you pointed out, putting her daughter in danger, but trying to, make it seem as if she needs to create a better world for her daughter. And it's like, listen, you can do that in other ways,
Right.
not just all of a sudden discover this activism. And then also even flirting with another man
Oh
when
yeah.
you're trying to, and he's trying to convince you to put all of your money in stock into, um, buying a building. And she was just this floating feather, just kind of floating all in the world. And I just thought that is just such a poor example of motherhood.
Hmm.
And I feel like more Black women need to pay attention to, um, that, those moments, those mistakes that she made.
And,
Um,
and
no,
you're,
yeah,
and I think you're dead on. But one thing you just reminded me about, when I mean, she has this crush on this guy who, I think he's selling like natural produce at the farmer's market, and that's right in line with her whole cooking kind of shtick. But more than just having a crush, they hang out. He spends time with her and her daughter.
exactly.
I was
So
so
she's
blown away,
cheating
and
on her husband.
they played it so matter of factly, like it was nothing. And I'm thinking, wait, no, 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 no. You're married, you're hanging out with a dude you have a crush on, who clearly in a couple scenes shows you that he not only knows your daughter, but he and your daughter have a relationship. Like they're cool. This is
Mm.
not the first time that the daughter has met him. Like they're cool, and so it's just like, I don't. That's never been a recipe for a good situation from what I've seen. And they played it off like nothing. And then the guy just kind of disappears and you don't see him anymore. And I was just like, that's not how that goes.
You see,
Uh,
but that's the funny thing when we're talking about when we're dealing with writing like this, when nowadays with modern women writing like that, you're leaving stuff hanging.
mhm,
Like the sister had just mentioned, like she said, Robin's trying to make a better world for her child. So
mhm,
you mean to tell me your husband and your child's father is not helping to make a better world for your daughter?
mhm,
See, this is where it comes
Exactly.
out that the man is not a
Mhm.
part of anything. So you
mhm.
mean to tell me how old is the child in the series?
Uh, what is she? She's
She's
like
about
seven at most?
10,
So
Oh,
maybe
she's
for
close
10
to
years of
10.
this child's life and possibly 15 to 20 years in Robin's life, this man has not been a good man to
yeah,
help
yeah,
bring this child through the world.
right.
This
No,
is what you see, but this is one thing I'm glad I would have said. So I'm not good enough.
mm.
I'm not making sure that this child is not getting along in the world.
No, they play him up to be, he wants to live in the suburbs in this really big house. He doesn't want to be around the people. And she's more grassroots. Like she wants to set up like a restaurant where people pay what they can afford. Like she's this salt of the earth BLM activist kind of woman, and she wants to delve more into that. And he's this, upper middle class aspiring, kind of, and they just kind of go in two different directions. And they almost kind of suggest in a way that him and Neil Long's character are finally kind of moving toward each other in a certain way. And I'll just finish it up by saying this, that, by the time you get to the end of the series, Nia Long, basically quits her job, and she's just going to kind of be a consultant and float off and find, her own way, as it were. And she tells him that, right now is not a good time. You're broken. You're going through a divorce. Call me when you get through this, or don't. Like, we'll be good one way or the other. So it's kind of left open, so the way the series ends, she floats off into life, he floats off into life, and he gets to visit with his daughter. Robin floats off into life in Ghana, and it's kind of left to that. And I know, again, I'm skipping over a lot, I'm sure. Elle, is there anything you want to bring up, because you saw it as well? Anything that I missed that we should talk about in this?
Um, other than that, I think towards the end of it, that was just the most powerful moment of the series, between Harper and Robin. And even seeing, Robin take the daughter away, you can see the hurt on the child. I thought that was the most heartbreaking part for me, because you're showing the cause of that separation
Mm-hmm.
between the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was, to me, and this is just my opinion, I just wish that I would have seen a much stronger evolution of these characters into this age that they're in. They're in their 40s, almost 50.
Yeah.
And you would think that these are characters that you want to aspire to be, especially, how the first movie set them up, in the late 1990s or almost early 2000s. They're young professionals trying to make it in the world. And here, to me, it was almost as if like it was a reality show to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah. It very much.
So
Mm.
so I just thought that, I'll just land, my plane here. I just thought that the writing, just took a turn in a direction where I didn't quite feel the growth of
Okay.
these characters. So
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see that. There's a whole nother kind of arc with Shelby, trying to redefine herself, working with Nia Long's character at NBC. I didn't go into that, but I will say overall, there was, of course, there was a lot going on. But I think what 72 Paths just told us in the comment section is a good place to end. It kind of ends where the first movie begins, right? It ends with the poker scene, and basically this is another demonstration of brotherhood, because this is Harper sitting in this big house, by himself. His daughter is in Africa. His ex-wife is in Africa. He's Nia Long is not going to be with him, so he's just kind of sitting there and depressed and watching TV in the dark. And his boys show up, and they don't really say much. They knock on the door, and they can tell he's depressed, and they just kind of come in and set up the table. And fellas know what that vibe is. We're gonna get this work in you one way or the other, because we know where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not gonna come in here and hold hands and really just ask you how you're feeling, and it's gonna take place over a poker game. And there are gonna be jokes there. We're gonna deride each other a little bit, the way men tend to, and we're going to kind of force you to interact and share the load of that pain while we do this. It's a ritual that they've had since the first movie, and it's used to kind of demonstrate how brothers support each other in the midst of the worst pain. And I did appreciate that element of it, because every group of brothers, has their own version of the poker game, and it can take many forms, many forms. But I did appreciate that they had that, and I did appreciate them sort of ending with his brothers coming through to make sure he's not sitting there carrying that load alone. And if you've been blessed with true friends, then that that doesn't always happen, especially when folks move away to different places as we get older. But when it is able to happen, it can be a very healing gesture. So I did appreciate that. And I'll say again, as far as the Best Man series, because you had men like Malcolm Lee involved in it, there were moments for men that resonated. But for the most part, at the end of the day, women consume more media, and they tend to buy more goods in relation to that media. So, media kind of lends itself to women's interests more, because at the end of the day, that's where the bread is buttered, as they say. So I want to thank you both for coming up. Elle, this is the first time I think you've been on the show, so I appreciate you coming up. And look forward to hearing more from you and your husband later, hopefully.
yes, thank you so much. I was a little nervous getting on, so I really appreciate your time, and again, love your channel, and love what you do. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You have a good night, and my best to your family.
Thank you too.
Now, Malika, man, I gotta thank you. Now, y'all, Malika has been up here for 3 hours talking to me about a series he hadn't even had a chance to watch. And I really appreciate that, man, because it's so much better to have a conversation than it is to, try and just give a lecture about this mess. So I really appreciate your willingness to do that and sharing your thoughts every time you come up, man. You always drop something that people walk away with blown away. So as you usually do, you did the same tonight, and I really appreciate you, good brother.
I appreciate you, Doctor. Thank you. I'm glad that we're speaking on movies and media that show our people, but looking it through a Black masculinist lens. One thing that I took away from this, and I was seeing people in the chat that they were saying that how the way Robin's character was, what I realized when I see a movie and I look at the characters, I'm like, okay, like, maybe you wake up the next day and see what it's like. But me being a man and coming from a logical perspective and just hearing what it is, I see 3 women who are lost.
Okay.
Nia Long's trying to find herself. Shelby, she ain't really changed. She's just old and she's lonely, and she got a man and she still has a simp on her hook. Robin is as trifling as all get out. Now,
and you got Regina Hall's character.
But Regina Hall, pardon the expression, she's a down ass chick. Regina Hall, whatever, down ass chick. Whatever. See, here, Regina Hall and Harold Perrineau are the most evolved characters out of it. And I would say maybe Morris Chestnut because dealing with his son, but like you said, they could have played it a little bit better instead of making him the Neanderthal type. But when you look at it and seeing what the situation is, okay, the creepy part where the guy wanted to assault her, all right, but they're together. Harold Perrineau was saying, yeah, baby, go for what you want to go for. But he had to come to grips with himself, as we all men have to deal with. All right, I can't make people see me masculine until I start seeing myself masculine, until I start doing masculine shit. Not saying that you got to go to MMA or anybody got to go and start, but he had to see the reflection of himself, how the way people saw him. And that was a connection to him he had to change.
No, you, especially as a man, I do believe you have to find that fire in you.
Yeah.
And however that is, I don't care if it's boxing, I don't care if it's fishing, I don't care what it is. You got to find that fire, that primal core of you that
makes you as a man, because men have to deal with risks.
Going
into the octagon, going into the dojo, going into dealing with another man where it's you and him. It's all, like you said, primal instinct. What are you going to do? That's something that he had to deal with. He did everything that he was supposed to do as a black man supposed to do. That's genetics. He went to school, got education. He was a good man, upstanding citizen, got married, had children, played the good husband, the good daddy role. Okay. But still, there was something missing inside of him. Him being a man.
Yeah.
What's the name said to him in the first movie? Where's your balls?
Yeah. And that's been his story arc. And shout out to 72 Paths. I think he's in agreement. He says, Doc, the scene where Regina Hall went to the fight and cheered her husband in the ring. So I mentioned that he had a tournament. I think that he was in an MMA tournament. And he didn't tell anybody about it. And so his boys kind of find out roughly around when his wife finds out, and they all find out while the final fight in the tournament is being fought. So they come in and support him. But as 72 Paths is pointing out, she's there. He didn't want to tell her, and he didn't think she would support him, but she does. Going to your point about her being a ride or die. She does.
Down ass chick. DAC. But the thing is, that's what from that first, well, not from the first, from the second movie, that's what I liked about her.
Mm-hmm.
She had his back from the grip because she believed in him and she loved him and she liked him. And when she saw that he was a good man, when his daughters were there and he embraced them, she looked at him and she knew that she still wanted to be with him, but she realized he had to get over this certain thing.
Well, to be honest with you, that was one of the reasons I was upset with him in the second movie,
Mhm.
because I felt like she had put enough work in where if you got this issue, the very least you could do is sit her down, look her in the eye, and say, "What's the deal with this?" You know what I mean? She, to me, he owed her enough respect to say to her,
Exactly.
"This is happening." There should be no instance where not only all of his boys, but her chief female rival has seen this video before she does.
Mhm.
That to me was a disrespect. I thought she earned enough from him to where, you know, she should have been, if not the very first person. I don't mind you telling your boy and trying to work it out, but she should have been in the top two.
And you know what? Going
You need
back
to
to the
sit down
words
and
you
talk
said,
to her about it.
earned.
Huh?
Because remember, Kevin Samuels said a woman has to earn that right, and she earned it.
She
She
earned
helped him build this school.
She earned it. Yeah.
She built this life for him. She bore her children.
Mhm.
She had his back. She knew that he
Mhm.
was trying to keep this thing, get this money up. She had his back. And
Mhm.
then in the third one, she saw that this is something that he wants, and she cheered him on. That's
Yeah.
what men we want. Here's the two things that men want: respect and peace.
Mhm.
Regina Hall's character from the second and third one gave him that and wanted him to have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing where I could say, boom, those two made the character arc.
You even see them, you know, kind of shifting roles on who takes the bulk of the load with the daughters, in terms of, you know, where one is working on their, you know, their career, or they're going to school, and you know, after a few years you flip to the other. And that's realistic. It is realistic. When you're married and you got kids and you're both trying to get your careers together, that tends to be what it is. There are times when you know, I'm not a great Michelle Obama fan, but she said something recently on that very subject. She said over time in marriages, that's what you do. You have to share that load, and sometimes somebody carries the larger amount of it, and then the other time, you know, the other partner does. And that's mainly because over time, all of it is going to benefit the kids. That's, you know, that tends to be what it is. So they play, you get to actually see that with them in this. You know, but I think what, you know, the difficulty of it is that because Murch doesn't have a strong sense of his masculinity early on, you know, there's some things that you could look at and question. You know, would he have done it the same way had he had that sense of himself earlier on? But I don't mind seeing the arc. I don't mind
Mhm.
seeing the growth, and seeing how he engages it, because there is something very necessary about finding that primal party. You know, and you go back to a Rocky reference, since we went there earlier. There's, remember Rocky 4, when he's talking
Mhm.
to his son and he's
Mhm.
about to go to Russia to train to fight Drago, and his son is like, "Yo, I'd be scared." And he's like, "Yeah, you know, I'm scared." He said, "But then there's this other side of me, and he isn't so scared, and he's pushing me to go on. He's pushing me to do the next step when I don't think I have anything left." That primal part of you is
Mhm.
core to manhood. It's not
Mhm.
just about conflict and fighting. It's about navigating life and pushing past your comfort zone. This is one of the reasons. What's that brother? Who's an ex Navy SEAL, David
David
Goggins.
Goggins.
That's one of the reasons he's so popular, because he's reminding men that you have to find that part of yourself, and it's
Mhm.
going to push you in whatever area you're in. I don't care if you're an athlete. I don't care if you're a scholar or you're a writer, or it doesn't matter. Whatever that is in you, you need to be able to hear that side of yourself that says, "Go on, keep pushing." That, you know, that's what I think this tried to address. But I think it's necessary for men to find that and never lose touch with it.
Mhm.
Never lose touch with it, because we can, and you can grow complacent, and then you'll find that things begin to slide in life and you don't know why. You got to stay in touch with that part of you.
Mhm. I agree.
But look, man, I really do appreciate any closing thoughts that you want to give in general about anything.
I just think we just need to have more discussions like this when we see um, media with our people in it, and not get caught up in the glitz and glam that, ooh, they're upwardly mobile black professionals,
Mhm.
and really peel back the layers and see what's showing us
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
Because now we have um, three tiers of these people: the 20s,
Hmm.
the early to mid 30s. Now we have the late 40s to early 50s.
Right.
And we can see where we at now. But at this time now, it's like, ooh,
Hey,
there's
man, if they do a series with these folks in their 70s, I ain't gonna have shit to say. I just ain't gonna have nothing to say. But but I mean, that's not something we get to see a lot of. So I do applaud Malcolm Lee, and I applaud the series for being willing to take us through, the lives of this group of friends over that amount of time. I can't say I've ever seen that before.
Mhm.
And the men actually, having the space to be men. Now, it's not what I would like it to be, but I do appreciate that it was there, at all. It's kind of like the end of the first season of Insecure. I mean, it's clearly not a series written for men, but you did get that moment where you got to see, a man actually handle things in the way most men nodded and, and was happy to see, because we don't often get to see our natural reactions in these kind of series, especially because they don't cater to us, So,
I
but
got one joking last parting remark and I'll shut up.
okay.
Shout out to down ass chicks.
Real talk, man. I ain't met too many of them. When I have, they get snatched up early. I'm gonna give them that.
Yes.
Snatched up. Anytime I've seen a down ass chick, somebody found her a long time ago. But shout out to the down ass chicks.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming through, bro.
I appreciate you too, man. And I love you, brother.
Love you too, man. Peace.
Peace.
All right. Shout out to the good brother, Malika, for being willing to come up. Thank you for that. I appreciate you guys joining us. I want to hear your thoughts, your reflections on the series, or anything we talked about here in the comments section. I know I skipped over a lot. I feel bad about that. I'm usually one to take notes, but I realized that if I didn't do this show tonight, I wasn't going to do it. So I just decided to run with it. So I appreciate y'all's patience, but remind me of what I missed. And let's chop it up in the comment section. Y'all have a good night. Peace. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic, selfish, and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.